Dorian.
My brother. This is gonna be a good one.
Yeah. This is a pretty important podcast in that it's going to go over the start of our fight and MMA team. We didn't know what we were getting ourselves into at the very start between Louis Simmons and Matt Brown Science and a lot of interactions in between. We were able to put together what it is now, our MMA program for strength conditioning. So it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
I would like to start at your start.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever got into that where, how did you end up in Muay Thai?
Like everyone else, I was watching the Kung Fu movies, and then when Van Damme was a kickboxer, come out and seen the Thai boxing, and it was actually, I was in Virginia Beach at the time, and I don't know if you remember Black Belt magazine.
Yeah.
And in the back of Black Belt magazine, they had the Panther videos. You remember they had the things for the videos you could watch, the VHS tapes. And then, so I saw one, and this is back when Charlie Sheen had done the movie Navy SEALs. So I was fascinated with two things, Navy SEALs and Van Damme kickboxer. And there was a guy in there, Frank Cucci, and he had on his little rifle and everything. And he's like, I was like, wow, man, this guy's a Navy SEAL. And he does martial arts. So I don't know what I was thinking was going to happen. And then so I saw that he had a school in Virginia Beach, right not too far from where I was. So I was like, oh, I'm going there and check it out. So I went there. He was there. There's a Thai guy there. He was teaching Muay Thai. So I was like, this is cool. So I just started. That was my journey into it. And then it was about 1998. I actually went over to Thailand.
As a kid, were you in martial arts?
No, I was more into other sports, basketball, and I would do a little bit like karate, a little bit, but nothing of any serious.
And if I remember, like, you went to OSU for business, the whole...
Yeah. I had a degree. Yep. People don't realize that.
No, and I remember when we were talking about, what was it? Well, we're looking at how difficult would it be to set up a fighting league. And then you kept coming up with all these ideas and strategies and all this progressions. I remember Matt going, like, Dorian, why are you so fucking smart at this? And you're like, well, I went to OSU for business.
Yeah.
We're like, what?
People don't know that.
What led you to Virginia Beach?
I went down there to actually go to school down there. Took a year off, so I went down there for a year just to kind of work, hang out, and then I ended up going to school down there at Hampton University. And then once I got in there, I was gonna. I actually was kind of okay at football, but I decided I didn't want to play down there. People don't believe this. There was a point where I ran a 4.3 40. I know it may not seem that way, but I was very aerodynamic.
What position did you play?
Receiver and safety. I like to just throw myself at people.
I got you. Well,
I was sense. A kamikaze, yeah. Kind of like my fighting style.
So when you went over to Thailand,
yeah,
what was that like stepping off the plane?
Very different because this is back when the planes didn't even have TVs. So getting over there, it was like as a teenager, it was like a magical land. I mean, it was very different. It was kind of, I would consider that maybe the tail end of the golden era.
Yeah.
So I wasn't prepared for the like, I was okay to get my ass whooped in the little venues, but nowhere was I prepared for like the big venues. Like I actually went and watched Lumpinee, which came into play. I went to the Lumpinee Stadium, the original, to watch with a trainer because I went outside of Bangkok.
Yeah.
And then it kind of, that'll come later into my story about that experience in Lumpinee. But I was looking, I was like, man, I don't know how I'm going to fight here one day, but I just knew somehow I would.
Did you have contacts going over there, or did you just turn up there and try to figure it out?
I remember actually going to ask people in the kitchen staff, and like I had no contacts of what was going on over there. I was just like, hey, I got to go try this.
So where did you end up? Like what
I
facility?
ended up in the Muay Thai Institute, and then which I think that's where they hold the Rancic Stadium is at. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but it was and then just went to like other little gyms around.
How long did you stay there for?
About 7 months.
So then you get back here.
Mhm.
Now, I might be wrong in this, but just from my own interest on the outside of the sport, is that it really did seem that Kevin Ross, Joe Schilling, Mr. Mark Beecher, and yourself were really the four horsemen of American
And
Muay
this
Thai.
guy, Sean Yarbrough. Nobody gives Sean the credit.
Yeah.
Sean Yarbrough. Yeah.
How did all you guys find each other? Was it through fighting, or how did that all come
Well,
about?
Sean and I actually I think I started a little bit before Sean in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
And he ended up moving to Vegas. And I remember coming back years later, we were just visiting. I was down there and we were hanging out. I forget why I ended up down there, but being from the East Coast anyway, somehow I ended up back down there. We were hanging out again. And he just like, well, why don't you come out to Vegas? You know, I'm out in Vegas because I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
What I was doing. He was like, I think I was out here by then. And he was like, well, come out to Vegas and start training. That's when I went out there. I took him up on the offer, and he opened the door to Master Toddy's with me, and that's when Kevin was there. Beecher had came a little bit later. Beecher was already doing this thing on the California scene, but he came a little later. Chaz Moki came out there. Gina Carano was out there. And yeah, so Kevin and I, this is when Kevin was still he was still amateur fighting smokers. And so I stayed with Sean. So then I started just staying out there for a little bit. And because I actually took time off from OSU, and then went out there and started living in the gym with Kevin. We just started hitting us. I was living in the gym with Kevin at the old Master Toddy's gym. I think it was off of Rainbow. Was it? I think it was Rainbow. I forget. In Vegas. Yeah, we were living in the gym. Went just Thai style. So Master Toddy, his wife lived in the room. I think it was Master Lu Chang lived in another room. I lived in the room, and then Kevin lived in the room. And then sometimes we would go over and hang out with Gina and stuff like that. But yeah, we just lived in the room. I had the rice cooker. It was like Thai style, so it was perfect. And that's how but Joe Schilling was always, and the funny thing is, I've never actually met Joe in person. We met in a show in Ohio once when I was a long time ago when I was fighting. And then he went out and did his thing in California, but we actually never officially met. We just like mutual respect because of, everything that he's done in the sport. Yeah. And then all the guys, we just all kind of know each other, just knowing one another, just a respect thing.
How important was that foundation to your development?
Immensely important. I mean, just to be around guys like that, guys like Sean, Kevin, just to see their work ethic and what they became, because at the time, I think I was more advanced in terms of having more pro fights and all them, more fights in general, because it really didn't have the amateur pro thing when I was starting. But just to see the where those guys rose to. I mean, Sean became, I think he won an intercontinental WBC champ, believe world champ. No, quote me on that, but I know he had a couple belts. And obviously, we all know what Kevin ended up becoming. Even guys like Chaz, Beecher. But just to be around that much talent and that type of work ethic and a champion sort of mentality, especially to be around Kevin like that, it really shaped me. And it actually like kind of was like the catalyst for me wanting to go over to Thailand again for that second time. Yeah. Is because I was like, okay, he's going to be the face of Muay Thai over here in America. And he deserves it. Because I remember I used to make the joke when he was still amateur. I was like, man, you're going to be the Ramon Deckers of America, bro. And he would always laugh. And now we look back, I'm like, yeah, remember I told you. Because you could just see, you ever know how you meet somebody like, all right, I don't know what it is, but there's something special about this person. And I think we all saw, like, there was just something special about Kevin. Like, there's something you can't describe. And so he kind of was like, okay, if he's going to do it here, I'm going to go over to Thailand and try and, and make a name and see what I can do over there and make a name as an American and on their soil.
So if you can help me out with your lineage of places, because you have went and worked with basically nearly everyone, right? You've been to around some of the best coaches who've given you these little bits of advice that have kind of shaped who you were. So from that Vegas scene, what was your next step? Where did you go next?
Well, I had a little stint in MMA. Thank God that was over.
Well, let's touch on that, because it wasn't just.
Can we skip that? No.
That was when you got in a fight with a microphone on the.
I'm telling you, look, they don't need to shove the boom mic that close to your face. But
how did the Ultimate Fighter come along? How did you get on that show?
I think part of it was, being in the Vegas scene, because we were just. This is back when Vegas was the mecca of MMA. They hadn't really, everything, UFC, everything was Vegas. I mean, that was the place you wanted to be, the gyms, everything. It wasn't as global as it is now. So, and us being we were really kind of like a super gym as far as just pure Muay Thai.
Yeah.
And so would have some of the MMA guys coming to train. We would go out and train. This is back when it was, I think, Zions.
Oh, yeah.
Zions Gym.
Yeah.
Then it was Warrior. Then it was these other gyms. So Kevin and I and the guys, we would go out to the various MMA gyms and spar these guys, these MMA fighters. So I think doing that helped kind of get my name, and then fighting still come, because after I came back from Vegas, I would still go back there for I would take a whole summer basically and go and just stay and live in Vegas again, just go back to the gym.
Yeah. And
but I would still fight, come back out here to the Midwest to fight MMA. And then I really don't even, someone asked me about the Ultimate Fighter I made, so I made, they were like, hey, you should try out for this show. I was like, yeah, sure. So I made this silly little video, and they were like, and somehow I got on it, and I was like, oh, okay. And the rest is history. So
did you understand what was involved, in terms of you're going from a true martial arts background into a production? Did you understand what was going to be required of you on that show?
No, I had no idea what was gonna what I was really getting into with the because I just wanted to. And when you go and experience Thailand and the purity of it, and it's just like, hey, you're just gonna fight. That's what it's about, the fight, and it's not the production. It's either how do you perform when not the weigh-ins, not anything else, and that kind of. It threw me off. But I'll tell you something that I never told anybody in an interview. The reason people ask me, I never cared about MMA because it was never my dream, because people don't really know, so I never spoke about it. I had two brothers, and one of my brothers was very good. Kevin was very good at basketball. And I remember he was playing the guy that was I don't know, what player it was the number one player in the nation at the time. And he had a really good game and everything like that. And I remember it was around when I had, I think, my first or second fight. And so he had come visit me, and cousin had come down with him. They rode the bus down from Baltimore to Virginia. And we would just keep VHS days. So I would put in his game, he would take it out, and he would put in my fight, and we would just go back and forth. We talk about when he's going to make it to the NBA. And this is right when they stopped. You couldn't enter the draft anymore. They put the rule in where you couldn't come out of high school anymore.
Oh, okay.
But he was preparing for that. Well, he ended up passing away. So he died. Then not very long after, that same cousin ended up getting killed. Now, my brother died in a car accident. But so when people asked about MMA, it was never my dream, because my dream was always to fulfill my promise to him, because he would always when you make it, when we make it, I'm going to be coming to Thailand, and we're going to be doing this and doing that. And I would talk to him about this Lumpinee and all these stuff. He's like, man, when you make it, man, I'm gonna come over there and we're gonna watch you fight and everything like that. So MMA always felt like I was not fulfilling the promise. Mm-hmm. So that was why the importance of me, one, fighting in Lumpinee and staying consistent with Thai boxing came about. But I've never told that, and I never said that before.
Well, it makes a lot of sense of
that was my promise, was always for my brother too.
Well, you can see how that guiding star has always been through all your decision making for sure.
Yeah.
But you did make, outside of the whole microphone incident, you
was funny.
it was pretty ass funny. You made some great connections. I mean, you're on Team Hughes, right?
Team Hughes, yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't realize how many people knew you, because I'd know you and we'd go somewhere, just say anything to do with fights, and an hour later we're getting through the lobby and you're like, oh, hey, what's up? Hey, what's up? Hey, Dorian, what's up? And because you're so quiet, right? Like you when it comes to Muay Thai, like we can talk all day, just in general. But can you speak on about the people you met and like outside of the production? Like, was there any important friendships or contacts made during that?
On the show?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all the guys really, I really developed a good relation. Like I got along with all the coaches, all my peers, and that's what was most important to me, because you know you always want to be respected by your peers in anything you do, first and foremost. So I think they could see that I had a gift for like Muay Thai, and they could also see that like I had just a work ethic to just learn and be a martial artist. So even when I lost, I was like, hey, show me some wrestling stuff, or hey, show me, you know, the grappling stuff. And it was after the show that Matt Serra is the one that invited me to New York, and I always make the joke. He gave me my first 2 stripes of my white belt at the time, and then introduced me, opened a lot of doors. Him and I knew a guy named Dave Branch, and all from the Henzo Association. And then I ended up getting my blue from a guy named George Giselle. Then I went back to New York, and then got my purple from Dave Branch. And then I was like, all right, that's enough. I'm going to Thailand. But I met Hughes. I didn't have a bad relationship with, you know, I really formed a bond with Sarah. Really, Robbie Lawler and I were really cool. I mean, he probably saved me from like getting completely booted off. But I do know it was pretty cool because they both went to bat for me. All of them did when it was time for me to keep having that meeting, which when everyone sees about me yelling at the camera and things like that. I mean, that scene took like an hour because I couldn't stop laughing. But Dana was laughing, so I started laughing. He was like, were you really going to fight? I was like, no, I'm not going to fight the guy. I was just annoyed, man. Leave me alone. So he started laughing, then I laughed. Then it was the producer or whatever. He kind of had a stick up his butt. So he was like, fucking kid, you keep laughing. I was like, man, he's my boss, not you, man. Yeah. But I think part of it just the relationships that I developed was because, like, one, I think they could see I had a skill set because you didn't have those level of striking at the time. It was still lower level of striking in MMA. And so I remember I would spar with the guys, and they didn't notice I did pretty much my whole career like left-handed. So they all thought I was left-handed. And so one day out on the show, I just got pissed. And I had lost the fight, so I just got pissed. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to go back conventional. And then I just started like kind of piecing up a lot of the guys on the team. I remember sparring Matt and piecing the guys up. And I remember Robbie asked me, he's like, wait a minute, you're right-handed? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, I haven't been showing you all this stuff left-handed. And I was like, oh, because on the show I'm gonna fight left-handed. And for my MMA career, I've been fighting left-handed. He's like, what the fuck? He's like, why haven't you been fighting right-handed? I was like, this. I don't really care about this as much. I just want to get back. I'm lost. I just want to get back to doing Muay Thai and get back to Thailand.
How much did other disciplines play into your style of Muay Thai?
Oh, tremendous. A lot. I mean, it wasn't for Mark Coleman and Kevin Randall and meeting them, I wouldn't be in the MMA in the first place. And so I always came into it with a wrestling sort of like that wrestling mindset really shapes my how I do Muay Thai. That sort of grounded mentality. And even I started to study judo, a lot of upper body wrestling, and how that infused into the Muay Thai clinch. Did
any of that come from your stint in New York? Because did you spend any time with John Danaher for a little bit?
I did. And the funny story about that is, like, I was Dave Branch's uke. Like, so Dave would really open a lot of doors up for me. I mean, to me, he's probably one of the most complete martial artists I have ever seen to this day in all my travels. And at the time, I was living in Harlem, and I would basically he was like, look, just come around. And like, I was like, quote unquote, kind of his like coach, but it's uke at the same time, and then his friend, you know what I mean? And like he was like mentoring me into the MMA game, really. And we would literally, I would meet him down there at Henzo's, and Danaher was there, and I remember just like I would just be quiet. I wouldn't say nothing, whatever they asked for. So I would just like let Dave toss me around, and I would just try and pick up the knowledge by just being quiet, just throwing me around, He never spoke to me. Then one day, Dave and I got to spar, and I was just thinking to myself like, fuck yeah, this is my motherfucking shining moment. I'm like, oh yeah, because I've been getting thrown around. So we had just a great sparring match. And I remember my nose, so Dave caught me. I mean, anybody know Dave Branch, he big guy, hit like a truck. So I was trying to be Ong Bak. I was trying to run up his leg. I was doing all this shit. And so he caught me and I was bleeding. And then I remember saying, oh, Mr. Price, would you like to stop this? I said, hell no. I remember I just like wiped the blood off and then like just wiped it all over my mouth and just kept going. Then after that day, he talked to me at the end. It was like, showed like, he's like, Mr. Price, I have a lot of respect for you. And I was just like, shit, man, that's amazing. I don't know if you remember this story, but it was hilarious. And then after that day, yeah, I think that had to be like 2-3 months in before he actually like, then he actually spoke to me and I was like, oh, this shit is cool. It's like the monk finally speaking to you, and the whole time I'm just the quiet uke in the corner.
Yeah.
For Dave. But yeah, but it was funny because I would go from we would go from there, and we would go to Brooklyn for boxing, and we would go to Jersey because he was teaching at a school in Jersey. He hadn't opened his own academy yet, so he was doing out of this wrestling school called The Edge in Jersey, and he was going there Hoboken. So I would literally just follow him all around one day, and from Danaher to the boxing gym, we would go Lower Manhattan, just all over the city, just eating what we can look like, just eating here and there, eating on the subway. We get our food, then we get on the subway train. We just all over the place. But yeah, I owe Dave a lot for helping get me into certain rooms, get me around a lot of knowledge that I might otherwise not have been able to get around. But it also required me to humble myself to be able to do that. And in that short amount of time, like I was literally like, was able to progress so fast because I was literally basically just immersed in the camp. Whatever he was doing, I was doing. So when it would come time for, I was getting jujitsu almost twice a day, boxing with him. We still do our, our whatever work we need to do, but it was really like, he opened a lot of the doors and I got to get around a lot of knowledge, which also in turn, I didn't realize it, but later on this helped my coaching career, being around that type of knowledge.
The understanding
that right.
What's that?
I don't know if I answered that right.
No, yeah, dude, it's like there's nothing linear with your story and everything.
Stories are crazy,
but it is amazing that you studied all these disciplines with still your guiding star of like Muay Thai is your goal. You have your goal to fight in Lumpinee, but you didn't do it like solely on like Muay Thai 24/7.
No.
You pull from all different disciplines to make it your own style.
Absolutely. And you know who really, the first person to put that in my mind was Coach Pena on The Ultimate Fighter. He was like, you got to take it and make it yours. And he was really good on the boxing coach. And he would always just see me doing Muay Thai on the bag. And because I just never wanted to sit around. So when the guys would have a day, I was like, man, fuck, I'm going to do something. Show me some wrestling stuff or I'm just going to hit the damn bag. And he was like, look, Muay Thai is like this, and he had some fascinating, the way he broke down boxing was very impressive to me. It was unique in terms of his footwork. And he was like, look, Muay Thai does this, but you got to take it and make it your own. And that always stuck with me. So that goes, I guess, to what you were saying about how I took and sprinkled all the other disciplines to make that, because that was really opened my mind. Because before that, if you watch, if we ever find a VHS, like in my earlier, I was very Muay Thai-esque.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really, when he said that to me, it really opened my mind to, okay, let me look and start embracing other styles and see what I can make this my own.
You couldn't have really planned a better foundation of knowledge to coach fighters MMA, because you're around every other discipline, even though striking might be just a the one that you want to teach and look at, but you can understand all the other arts that make a fighter and help with defense. Because the whole really strategy is you want to pull someone into your best strength so you can kick their ass.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to do that if you don't know the other arts.
Absolutely.
So then how did you and Matt meet?
Matt and I met. Jeez, it's been.
Was it a Matt Humes?
No, it was early 2000s. At a jiu-jitsu gym here, but not it was a Japanese jiu-jitsu gym when I first had come out here.
Dustin Weir's?
No.
Japanese jiu-jitsu gym.
Gosh, I forget. And so you're in there, and then like we just started becoming friends, and I had already been doing Muay Thai for a while. You know, I'd already had been to Thailand, already had fights and stuff. And then we just kind of hit it off right there. And then from that point, like as our careers going forward, it was like I was like, man, I just like Muay Thai, man. And like he said it before, he's like, there's no money in that shit, man. You can stick to that shit doing the MMA thing. I was like, all right. So I kind of dabbled. Like I said, I dabbled. My MMA career was only like four or 5 years, really. It wasn't that long. But after that, we ended up going. We would go down to Cincinnati to George Giselle's at the time. They had Rich Franklin there as champion, and that was actually the first super gym that was ever created. And people don't give Professor George Giselle enough credit because that was like, I mean, if you're looking back at it now, I think out of that gym, I want to say 9 of us went to the UFC and made it out of there. I mean, you had Rich Franklin who was a champion at the time, the middleweight champion. I want to say almost George was fighting in the UFC at the time. You had a guy, Dustin Hazlett. So there were quite a few of us that end up Luke Zacharias. Yeah, there was quite a few of us that ended up getting to the UFC out of that gym. I want to say like 9. I might be off a little bit, but so Matt and I would go there, and then we just really just became just really good friends. And it was like kind of like that's when people ask me, like I never was really his. It's weird when people say coach because I was always his friend first. Yeah. And it was just like I happened to be a friend that had a certain skill set that he needed for his, because I was like coaching but still going on through my career because the majority of his career, well, all of it really, because I was known him well before the UFC, but I was in Thailand, so he was actually the way I was able to come back to the US because I damn sure didn't have any money to get back.
So let's jump back over the pond to Thailand. When did you start making Thailand your base? Like, this is where you wanted to be, and now that I know some more of that backstory of what was driving you, like, to be an American and push as hard and to achieve as much as you did in Thailand is not an easy task. And if you look at how hard Raymond Deckers had in Thailand, like he literally had to put people away because he knew if it went to decision, like he's not just not getting it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So knowing you had that uphill battle, like what was that like?
Well, I won't even put myself close to the Ramon Deckers category. I mean, I guess when people look as I paved the way because there weren't many Americans other than a guy that we both know, Cyrus Washington, who, in my opinion, is probably the main person who paved the way for Americans in Thailand. Yeah. Him and I both over there together. We really didn't. There weren't many others. Myself, him, and there was another one, a guy named Matthew Semper. It was only us, and when we were there, it was you're really on an uphill battle because you look at Australia has always been up there, you know, always well respected. France is respected. Ireland is very respected, you know, and I'm talking about in the eyes of the Thais when it comes to Muay Thai. The British, you know, but as far as America at the time, I mean, and they didn't really look at us like, because I want to say, I think I went over there, it was like towards the right in the end of 2008, beginning of 2009. Like I said, as soon as I got my purple belt, I was like, I'm out of there. And very, very, so it was like we constantly had to prove ourselves because they didn't really understand, like, you know, they see an American and they're thinking like, oh, okay, this is going to be an easy one or whatever. So I want to say, I looked at it from the standpoint I wanted to do it the right way. So I got actually invited over to, and this is why I say, you know, I don't think I would have done what I've done had it not been for the UFC. So I always have to always have a lot of love and respect for the UFC, because doing that, even though I didn't have the success fighting wise, I think because of the way people looked at my Muay Thai, it really opened a lot of doors for me. Because I ended up getting invited to Tiger, and at the time it was small. And you and I have talked about it because, you know, you were over there even before I was there. It was smaller, and I wanted to start in the provinces and work my way up. So I would start fighting in the local things in Tiger, and then they start putting me as the like main attraction on the poster with everyone else. And I'm like, and they're like, okay, now people are betting there, and maybe they're bringing a tie in from Bangkok, and so that's how I wanted to do it that way, and then work my way up.
Just go around the buses? Do you have to make the parades around?
No, they never put me on the buses, but you would see my picture on the bus next to the bus. So they would always have my, you know, big fight, big fight. You remember that one? The speakerphone there, the big fight, Friday, big fight.
How did that feel, like being in those stadiums at the start? Because when I experienced it, my head is just going back to Jean-Claude Van Damme, the kickboxer, to Bloodsport, to where like, oh, this is a whole nother world. And I'm not sure what your take was when I first got to Thailand. There's a lecturer who was in our university, Richie Bulger, told me about Tiger Muay Thai. You should go out there. And the advice he told me, once you get off the airplane, it's like Dodge City.
It is. It is Dodge City.
Tiger was so small that someone was supposed to pick us up. When I got off the plane, myself and my buddy, we turned up, and we were swarmed by people. And no one from Tiger. I'm like, oh, so we just got in the back of a blacked out Honda Civic.
Yes.
And we're driving into the jungle.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm, oh, we're not coming back. I'm like, this is it. We picked the wrong taxi. There's nothing to be seen. And then out of nowhere, we're there. But I just remember the people are so nice. The culture is phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you make it way easier when you immerse yourself and you understand their culture. You just don't try to bring yours with you.
Yeah.
But getting to those stadiums, watching the fights, betting with the tuk-tuk drivers, the whole lot was like, oh, this is a whole different world. And it's such a pure thing to see, because you start with the kids shows. Like the kids come on and they are so talented. Yeah. What was your take? Like when you started getting in there, and like, and you're in the ring, like you're now in there fighting with ties.
Well, remember, when I first got over there, I remember I went blind. I don't know if you ever heard that story, where I lost my vision. I got an infection. I don't know what it was, but it felt like at some point it started feeling like somebody's making paper cuts on my eyeball. So I literally remember Big Buddha. They would ride me up Big Buddha because they thought I was cursed or something. And I had this eye patch, and I remember with the wind blowing on the back of the scooter, it took almost like 2 hours. So I had to be like, hey, you guys got to stop, man. This is my eyes killing me. I would keep falling like I was going to fall off the bike. They just kept wanting to ride me up there to meet the monks or something because they thought I was cursed. And it was about 3-4 months where I was literally like absolutely blind in that eye. And by the time they figured it out, like I just kept spending the money. You know how they're just like taking your money, no problem. And they weren't really giving me any sort of like treatment. I would say it's like, hey, you got to turn your fan off because maybe it's drying out your eye. So there was no aircon in the room. So I'm like on the, you know, the plastic. I didn't even have bed covers. So you know the plastic over the mattress? So I'm sleeping on the plastic on the mattress on the little spring with no fan. That was my only source of cooling. And I'm just hearing packs. I'm right outside the ring. See the intermediate ring? You know what a ring is? And then the little the bungalow huts. Yeah. So I'm right there. So it's all day I'm just hearing doosh, doosh, doosh. And so when they finally fixed it, I had already lost some of the vision in the eye. And they're like, you can't get it back. It's like, maybe it'll return, maybe it won't. And I remember I was like running out of money, and I was like, and I remember I called my mother to put on my little top-up phone, and I was in a panic, like, Mom, you gotta help me. I think I'm going blind. She's like this, baby, this is your dream. You need to figure this one out yourself. Call me if you dying, but this what you wanted, you gonna figure this one out. She's like, you got your other eye, can you see out of that? I said, yeah. She's like this. All right, baby, well then good luck, figure that one out. If you die and call us, we'll help. And so I was like, well, damn, I'm gonna get it. So I remember it was a big tournament in the Philippines, and they and you know how the promoters, they'll call around and like, hey, we're looking for an American, we're looking for like you know how the concept of racism is like, we need a black American to fight, or we're looking for a white American, or we need an Irish guy to fight on these things. And like, so they were like, look, we need an American. It was a 4-man tournament, and it was one from a Chinese promotion in the Philippines. And I was like, and they were like, do you want to fight? Can you see? I was like, I sure can. I was blind as shit in the eye. And I was like, I sure can see. Get me to fight. And that was my first experience over there. And I remember it was a 4-man tournament, getting fucked up because the Chinese guy who missed weight, all the Chinese guys missed weights by like 10 pounds. And remember we said like, because a couple of other Americans were on the show, so we were like, hey man, you motherfuckers gotta go like make the weight. Like go make the weight. So they put on their sauna suits and they go out in the hallway as if they're gonna go ahead and make the weight. And so we're refueling and we walk out there and they're just fuckers just sitting there huddled up, eating pizza or whatever. They're just doing whatever they want. I was like, you gotta be shitting me. And so in the first round of the fight, of the tournament, I'm fighting this guy that must have been like Yao Ming's little brother. He was like 6'4". So he like swells my good eye shut. So I'm like, I'm fucked. So I'm just, and this is round 1. He caught me some good shots, and it was a sand shao tournament. Like sand, like their Chinese thing. And I remember because they gave us these shorts, like, you got to wear these shorts. So I was like, yeah, sure. So I gave them to the guy. I was like, put this in your bag. I'm not wearing this shit. And yeah, that was my first experience. And then on the way back, and I remember in the Philippines, you have to walk through security before you get into to even get into the airport. So I remember walking there. So my eyes like damn near swollen shut, and I had just these pesos or their currency, and then in my pocket, I put it on the thing and put everything on the belt and go through. And they have like the military there. And I remember they come over to me and they're like, when I'm going to get my stuff, and they're like, come here. And they're like, we found drugs in your bag. I was like, all right, man, I know how this works, man. How much is it gonna cost to get me out the country, man? Like, let's just stop this, let's just shortcut this shit, man. What you guys looking for? And then so they take the money and then they take the majority of it. Then they remember you have to pay a tax to get out of the Philippines. So they're like, here, take this back, because you have to pay to leave the country. So that was my first experience. But I tell you what, in saying that, I loved fighting in the Philippines. Aside from that, because the fans are some of the best. But yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but I kind of went on a little tangent because that was my first experience. But I think you were talking about the stadium,
But just that experience alone was amazing. How did your eye get fixed? What happened?
Never did. I never got all the vision back. No, I didn't give a fuck. No. It's not blind, but it never came all the way back. But in that fight, I could really barely see out of it. I could see out of the other eye until the fucker started punching it. I mean, he shut him, and he hit really hard. No one checks your hand wraps anyway.
Yeah,
no one cared.
Did you ever find out what happened?
No, because I never had. And it was in Thailand. And the funny story is the guy who actually saved my eye was Mark Hunt.
How did he get involved?
Mark Hunt just happened to be over there. And because Australia and New Zealand, they have a huge kickboxing Muay Thai culture there. So, they're always just closer for them to go to Thailand, no problem. And so he happened to be over there. And because they weren't in, I think I was the first, I guess, quote, if you want to call me UFC veteran, to live over there full time. We just kind of hit it off. It was hilarious. He taught me how to ride a scooter. And I remember he would have had me like driving. Now, mind you, I still can't see out of the eye and shit. And he was like, so this is before the fight happened. And then he was like, hey man, I was like, man, I'm running out of money, man. I can't get this shit fixed. So he's like, oh man, I'll get it fixed. I'll help you out. So he helped me out a little bit. Then he was like, hey, we're gonna go get a scooter. And I was like, I can't ride a scooter. He was like, in this New Zealand accent, don't worry, mate. And then we ride around this parking lot, and then I kept like falling over. And then the one time I made a full circle, he was like, oh, we're good enough to ride on the street. I was like, I don't know about this. And this is the funniest story. We try and go up this mountain. Oh, he's too big for his bike, so we didn't have enough. So he's like, let's switch bikes. So I get on his bike and gun it and like run it to the side of the mountain and shit. And it's like, this didn't happen, but this is what it just seems like. It's like he picked up the bike one arm, picked me up another arm, and walked across. And I was like, oh, look, an eagle. Because it was a guy, Promtep Cape the Mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a guy with it, like a big-ass eagle. And I was like, oh, an eagle. But meanwhile, I'm bleeding and shit because I just ran into the side of the mountain. And then we get some water poured on, and then I take a picture with the eagles. And then, Mark Hunt was a great guy. And believe it or not, that guy is an amazing chess player. There was a guy who just thought he was real slick and smart. And I want to say, no, don't quote me on this, but remember the Crown Royal bags?
Yeah.
Mark Hunt used to have this bag that reminded me of the Crown Royal bag with his little chessboard in there. And he would come there and smoke this guy. It was the nicest ass whooping I've ever seen. Like, don't move there. Oh, mate, don't move there. Okay, checkmate. And the guy thought he was a British guy, thought he was the smartest shit, was this master chess player. And here comes this big Samoan and just smokes him in chess.
I would never have known that. That's amazing.
Mark Hunt is the one that really helped save my fucking eye from going all the way, because I didn't know he was going to heal himself or I was going to go completely blind with it. So that's the funny story. And that was, before the fight in the Philippines. So that's like the story before the story.
I mean, as I said, there's so many tangents to what is Dorian Price.
Thailand was an adventure. I mean, how deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go?
I just think it's important because it all builds up to meeting you here at Westside.
Yeah.
And to where all your experiences give me an education of, okay, how do we get this stronger? Between that and giving you that book of all these touch or trigger points in the body.
Yeah.
Do you remember, to where we're like, okay, how do we increase strength for this? How do we increase strength? Because Matt would have his schedule, which was wherever Matt's schedule was.
Yep.
And then in the meantime, we're like, hey, Dorian, what do you think about this? Mm-hmm. And we bands, the amount of stuff we did with bands, all that.
Yeah.
Because you could tell me stuff from a wrestling, like, how the fuck do you know about wrestling? And then you would go off in a story. And then jiu-jitsu, you think this would work? And you're like, well, let me try. I'm like, how do you know that? And you go off in another story. Yeah. But I think like the true nature of what made you was a huge part to what led into our MMA program. So when you met Mark, where were you based out of? Were you at Tiger then, or were you somewhere else?
Mark Hunt?
Yeah.
No, I was still in Tiger, so this was all within a short span. I think I was there for maybe a year and I want to say a year and a half, almost 2 years, and I had quite a few fights for them. And then it wasn't long after that. Yeah, right after that, I got the opportunity to. No, actually, I came back for a couple match fights, and went back. And that's when Sip Chai gave me the opportunity to be the first foreigner they ever sponsored. They were like, well, look, why don't you come here? We're going to, we want to sponsor you. Their style was punches and low kicks, and I kind of fit, even though I like the elbow a lot. I just had an aggression, and it was a perfect mesh. But that's when they extended that opportunity to me.
That's a huge honor.
Yeah. They had never sponsored American or any other foreigner. They never sponsored a foreigner. Before that, I was literally the first foreigner they sponsored. Lived on the floor in the mattress with the other Thais, my trainer and everything. And yeah.
When did you develop your clinch game and your elbow game? Like, when did you make that your version?
I guess I was fortunate because when I talk back to the first, and Sean Yarbrough can remember this, like, I think our instructor was a little more advanced. Frank Cucci, the SEAL, and anybody that's been around SEAL just realized how highly intelligent and motivated and outside the box thinkers they are. And that was the first time I ever seen like a Shark Tank where we would actually clinch and one person would jump on and constantly jumping on each other. So we kind of think had a better understanding of the clinch than really any I would say America at the time.
Yeah.
Sean can attest to that. But so that was, so I guess is you always fall in love, you know, with your first love, and then clinching in the elbows just from that experience. Now it wasn't as refined as it became later, but that experience, like, man, I didn't know what it was, but golly, I loved this. It wouldn't have been until I got to, I always liked the elbow and was good at, but it wasn't until when I got to Tiger, my first fight, like they didn't really say anything. It was just like after the Philippines, or after that Philippine fight, I came back, my eyes swollen and everything. I was like, look, hell, I'm gonna fight again. I think I fought like 4 days later after getting off the plane, and fought 3 days later after that, and just kept fighting. And the first time, a couple times, they wouldn't say anything in the corner. They were just like, give me the water, whatever. And I guess the trainer was kind of watching to see like, okay, well, what's his natural tendency? And then they started realizing, okay, this kid likes to really elbow. So then they started to hone it in. Like, okay, look, he's just, let's give him kind of the, Crudon was kind of like, let's give him the why and the when and the why. Like when he needs to be doing it, why he needs to be doing this type of elbow as opposed to that type of elbow, and how. And the clinch came in, started developing in with guys like Nonta Chai, Lumps and Crumbs, some of the other ties. But how it became my own style was really coming back when Matt would bring me back for camps. Because what would end up happening is I would literally show Matt, like, hey, Matt, this is the Thai clinch, and these are the, things we're doing from the Thai clinch. And then, Matt's very smart. So as he would be involved with the wrestling, and then he would go, Greco, the freestyle, whatever, folk style, whatever, wrestling. And we would start interchanging, and we would, obviously do our clinch session. And he would say, well, look, if I do it like this, the Thai way, what's going to happen is a Greco guy, or when he's MMA, is going to do this on me to counter that. So we're like, okay, well, let's see how we can, what if we try this way, or what if we try that way? And we were literally, once he started getting, like, the whole job of anybody is to bring a person up to your level to force you to have to get better. So I was like, once he started realizing, like, okay, these are the foot sweeps I'm doing, this is a little foot sweep, and he started, getting up to the level, then it was like, we would literally just go for hours. And so I would come back, and if I had a new little trick I learned, he'd have something that he learned, and we really would just, like, some of our sessions, we would just go in there and clinch and see who would get tired first. And then shit, we wouldn't even be pad work. We'd be like, hey, we just gonna clinch for fucking 2 hours, see what happens. And he's like, yeah, fuck it, right on. And through that, we actually developed our own style. And I would literally take the things that he would infuse from the wrestling and the MMA portion and take it back to Thailand and do it against the Thais, because they didn't have an understanding of it. When he would take the stuff I would show him from Thais, the tricks, and put it in the MMA against the wrestlers, because they didn't have any understanding of that. Yeah. So the foot sweep he did, it's like, that's kind of a combination of what we both kind of came up with, because if you look, the way we do it is not very traditionally seen in Thai boxing. And you don't see it too much in MMA. So that is something that we came together over the years and developed into a unique thing. Because if you ask some of the Thais, they'll say, I clinch funny, I clinch differently.
Yeah.
Because and that's one of the reasons. Matt and I have literally created, because the clinch, if you look at Thai boxing, it's an art. The clinch is an art within the art. And Matt and I have literally taken that and made it we could literally do a video breakdown and a whole course on the clinch that we have created.
There's a lot of, not similarities, but is there any of it rooted in judo? Like there is some aspects of that it's not Muay Thai, it's not MMA, but then you look at judo, you're like, oh, there's something here.
It's I've been fortunate to be around, and going back to the Dave Branch, there's two Haitian judokas, the St. Ledger brothers, phenomenal, and just talking to them, picking their brain, and then even just observing Danaher, you know, just observing him and what he would talk to Dave. Like I said, I was the uke, like the fly, I got to be the fly on the wall in the room and just listen and observe and just seeing how he would just break down and study other arts. And when he would study judo, I would literally go back and start looking at judo stuff. And and in doing that, I started to realize that there were some similarities. And I would start taking the ashiwaza or foot sweeps, or you have kosoto, kouchi, inside and outside foot sweeps. And I just started realizing, okay, if I can manipulate, and while judo has the gi, I started realizing, okay, well, the Thais are masters at manipulating the upper body without having it. We need a gi this way and this way. Now it's like, if I can get the push-pull concept from the Thais and then get these foot sweeps, it's going to be very easy. And so a lot of the foot sweep, I would say, is very, very judo-esque that Matt and I both do.
When you started implementing this into your fights, I'm going to assume it wasn't a success off the bat. You had to refine, because, or was it? Did you see success with like fighting against the Thais?
I saw success. The thing is, like, I was always a better clincher than what I showed, and it wasn't until I got to Look Probat, which is probably I got asked to go there. It was one of the most famous clinch camps to ever exist, clinch and knee camps. So far out in the mountains, there's no Wi-Fi or nothing. But one of the things is, after training, it's one round, an hour and a half of clinching. Just one round, and they have Thais that were my height. So getting to clinch with them.
Yeah.
But the reason I just really enjoy cutting people. Like, that was my thing. I just wanted to see how many scars I could leave on a person's face. Is like my calling card. But what I could do with the clinch is that you get to experiment in training, because you're constantly getting to clinch every day, 6 days a week. You know, at bare minimum, even if you're not a clinching camp, you're going to do 30 minutes of clinching. Now, if you're at a clinching camp, you're going to do an hour or more. So you're always going to get to try these different things. Like, there are a lot of things that I could do that I'll show in clinching that I wasn't allowed to do in fights because of my height. So if I bent over at the waist, like, I can do an ankle pick. It made me look like my spine was weak, being taller. Yeah. If I was to bend over, it made me look like I was weak in the spine, or I was supposed to clinch a certain way, push on the face, stand tall, knee, like that. So there were certain things I couldn't do because they were short man's moves. But in training, you can have fun with it. So I could do the judo things. I could do, even the lacing the leg, which you're not allowed. You could do that in training, but in the fight, those are fouls. Yeah. So a lot of this stuff, I was only able to do in training, because if I tried in the fight, I would lose a lot of points. But the one thing that I realized I had success with, and I had it in one of my Lumpinee fights, my second one, was the sweep, the Matt and I. That was the first time I was like, holy shit, this works. When I would instead of taking without the gloves, you would take the webbing of your hand and put it in the armpit. I started to realize, like, I could take the glove itself and put it up there as a fist and do it that way. And that was the first time I saw success with it. And I was like, holy shit, this works. And
how exciting was it to bring that back, train Matt, and have him utilize that in an organization where it was not a foul, where everything is, was that like kind of to where, like, hey, you can do this, you can like wrap up your foot, you can tie this up where you couldn't?
I think it was good, but at the same time, I only came back and I only brought the basis of the clinch, like, which for Matt, he had never seen nothing like it, which most Americans have never seen what the true Thai clinch really is, all the intricacies of it. I mean, you notice yourself, having been over there. People in America, well, in Ireland is such a high level, but I'm sure in America, you understood. People here don't really understand at the time what really Thai clinching was. They thought it was just grabbing somebody by the back of the head and not all the intricacies. So just showing Matt that, he was able, like I said, I can't take all the credit, because as much as I helped him into clinch, he helped me evolve my clinch as well. And then we ended up, creating our own clinch, where to the point now where if someone was to clinch him, his clinch is different than my clinch, but we still, what I mean? If that makes sense.
So the same foundation, but your interpretation is different.
Completely different, where he's going to do certain wrestling things, or, he's taken it and made it kind of his own. I've taken it and made it mine. So mine might be a little bit more finesse base or off balancing or foot sweeping. His might be completely different, where it might be a little bit more grind you out wrestling style base, but it's still going to be that, you know, objective is to fuck you up and smash your skeletal structure.
I haven't heard that in a minute. Yeah, I remember that was...
That is my MO, smash your skeletal structure.
Can you talk to me leading up to you fighting Lumpinee?
Yes. The first fight?
Yeah.
The first fight in Lumpinee was interesting because I had just fought a bunch. It's when I got to sit Muay Thai. I think I had just fought, God, I don't remember how many times, but I had fought a bunch of times. And
how many fights have you had?
Jesus. Combined, I think I'm close to 80 now. But a lot of them were like the Muay Watts and the villages and things like that, the provinces, you know, not the big ones. And you combine MMA and everything. So quite a bit of fights.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember because I had fought so much, and the girl was a girl I was dating at the time, and she was from New Zealand, but was in Australia at the time, and she had come over to see me, and then I remember I asked the boss, could we borrow the car? He was like, sure, but there's no way in the world you're driving because you can't drive a scooter. I was like, don't worry, I think she drives on this side. And so we went on to a place called Canterbury. Great spot. And then we had a little vacation time or whatever. And then I remember we came back to the camp and asked the boss, can she train? And they were like, yeah, sure. And we go running. So we run because at first I was like, hey, do you want to sleep in this in the room? And the trainer was like, oh, okay, she can sleep. And it's a floor. So it's my mattress and the floor. I was showing her my room, which is behind the kitchen with the little roosters and everything. She's like, this ain't happening. No fucking way. Because it's my mattress next to it. And I'm all excited, like, look, I have my own closet. And it's my mattress and the trainer's Crew Drewhouse mattress. And then at the time, it was Crew Yard's mattress. And so we're all in there. And then they were like, she can stay, no problem. She was beautiful. And then she's like, this is not happening. And so we go and stay in so after Canterbury, this is when I brought it back, I was like, hey, let's just stay here. And then we go stay in it's like the Love Motel where you can rent the room by the hour. So it's like you gotta walk down the street. Now mind this is in like Tamaka, there's nothing there. So it's like the little ass Love Motel down there. And so I was like, okay, so we stay there. So the next night or the next day, we go for the morning run. It's like 7 miles. We go for the run, come back, and I remember I start wrapping my hands, and the trainer, and then my trainer Crew Drew comes over, and he's like, "Don't wrap your hands. Don't wrap your hands. Take them off." And I said, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Okay, check weight. So I go to check the weight. He makes the call to the big boss, and he's like, "This. Okay, jump rope a little bit." And so I had already run, so I'm already sweating, so I lost the jump rope. He's like, okay, check weight. He's like, okay, makes another call. It's like, okay, tonight you fight. Let's go.
Really? It was like that?
That was that. And I didn't know. And then we get in the car and on the way to, they're like, the big boss is coming back to get you. So he was already in Bangkok. So he came back and they don't tell me where I'm fighting yet. I still don't know what the fuck's going on. I just know I'm going, but that's how it happened. Like, I know I'm going to fight. But in that point, I'm always on a constant state of like preparing ready for battle. So we're there. So he picks us up. We get in the car, and the girl I was dating at the time, I was scared as shit, but I'm trying to play it off because I don't know what's going on. I'm like, man, this is new. They never done this to me before. Like normally they give me at least a day's notice. And on the way down, and this could have just been accidental, I hear the doors locked, and they're like, okay, you fight Lumpinee. Because you need to hear the doors lock in the car, and you look, and I'm like this, and I'm already scared as shit. And they're like, okay, you fight Lumpinee. And then we go down there, they put us on the cattle, on the little cattle scale. You get butt naked, you get on the cattle scale, and you check the weight. You got the guy smoking a cigarette looking at you, with the sunglasses, and people looking around. It's like, okay, so then I remember, and then going back when I first went there as a kid, I remember I was getting emotional because I thought about my brother at the time and how I was there as a kid in the stand. So I remember I went to the boss after they have a place you can eat noodles at this is the old Lumpinee, the Mecca, the original. And so I refueled and did what I need, got my refueled, ate my noodles. And I remember to the boss, like, hey, I'm gonna go off for a little bit. Can I just walk around? And so I remember sitting in the same place that I sat in as a kid all those years ago in the 90s, like surreal, seeing myself, looking at myself fighting later that night. So it was like the most surreal moment, and I was getting emotional, and I was trying not to like tear up, but I was like, man, shit, hold it together. You got to fight later. So I'm dealing with the emotions of fear, knowing that I'm gonna have to fight against on the big show against a really good, a good guy. I didn't know who he was at the time because I didn't see him until I got there. And so the first time I actually saw my opponent is it was the TV thing. So instead of putting us across the key, they sitting us right next to each other, and I'm kind of looking over the guy, and the guy's scarred up and everything. And I'm like, this Joker looks serious. What the fuck? So I just remember like, all right, man, just don't give him a chance to find out how good he is, man. Just treat this like a 1-round fight. Like this is all or nothing. There's no point thing. So I just remember in the fight going out there and just telling myself, man, fuck it. If you're gonna die, you're gonna die. Let's go. And just ran at him. I just tried. I laid it on the line. If that fight would have probably gone the other round, I don't know how much energy I would have had, because fear is a powerful motivator.
Yeah.
And I realized, then I got comfortable. Once I realized I hit him with the first elbow, I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be good. And turned to find out after everyone told me how damn good he was. And then after that, that's when I started making a name, because nobody expected it. I was there to be cannon fodder for him.
Gotcha.
Like, I was brought in to be cannon fodder for that guy. Nobody knew. And then after that, I ended up making a name. And there's a funny story about that'll carry on later to Max. If you want to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
There was a guy named Rob Cox. Rob Cox is like a legend in the Muay Thai community, a British guy. He had a gym in the UK, has a gym in Thailand, and one of the first or only foreigner to be allowed to take pictures at the original Lumpinee, Roger Dermnum. Like, I mean, he's pretty much as Thai, you know what I mean? As close to being a full Thai as you can get as a Falong, as a foreigner. And so he was commenting my fight. And as a foreigner, you know, and I'm big on the history and who's who over there, and I want to make the right impression. So I remember I saw the lady, her name is Abigail. She's like my big sister. She was the liaison for the Sitmochai. And I saw her talking to Rob Cox, like, oh shit, that's Rob Cox. I said, man, did he commentate my fight? I didn't know at the time. I was like, man, well, at least I put on a good showing. And if I can go back for that. After I won that fight, I licked the ropes. And I licked the ring because I wanted that in my DNA. I was like, yeah, this is the original Lumpinee. I wanted that in my DNA. Then I tried to kiss my girlfriend at the time, and she's like, this ain't happening. You for sure have a disease. So the rest of the trip she was there, she damn near wouldn't kiss me. Because I remember I just licked, tried to walk down the whole thing and licked the whole thing. And then I got to the bottom and like, I rubbed my gloves and I licked those. But I just wanted that shit in my DNA. So after, back to the Rob Cox story. So he's so well respected in the community, and like as far as his photography and being able to commentate and all this stuff, and amongst the Thais, and he's been there in the golden era of Muay Thai. Like he himself had some fights as well, was trained there from the golden era, and I remember. So I would just think about that. Later on, years later, I don't think if he did my other Lumpinee fights, but years later, when I fought at Max, he commentated the double knockdown. And after that, he gave me a job. And I used to make the joke about, man, I bet you regret this, don't you? I would make the joke about the Lumpinee fight. He was like, oh, mate, but I owe a lot to him as well. He really, really opened a lot of doors. But I think that was just ironic that from that moment, commentating my first, and he would follow my career throughout and for the fights and stuff and give, advice or whatever. And then it wasn't until, because we were in two different parts of, like, I was outskirts of Bangkok and his gym was on the other side of Bangkok, by the Dung Mung, by the airport, the other airport. You know what I'm talking about. And so completely opposites. I think it was 2 hours out of Bangkok and then went even further out in some of the other camps. But yeah, so that's how the Lumpinee story led to
Max.
the Max Muay Thai. But it was after that fight that got me noticed.
For people who can't comprehend Lumpinee, how would you compare it to just say another boxing stadium, another fighting stadium? Like, what's the equivalent?
I'd have to say you'd have to look at it like Madison Square Garden, but then magnify it by 10. At the time, I don't think any American at the time had won. And I don't even think many had fought there, to be completely honest. I don't know if I'm one of the first to ever fight and have success there. Someone have to know, don't call me on it, but I don't believe that there were. And I think that was one of the big things, because they would talk about getting ranked in, being the first American to be ranked there.
Yeah.
But just it was one of the oldest, the most prestigious stadiums. It was the king's favorite stadium, and it's run by the military. So when you go in there, you can't have any facial hair. You you see these soldiers around. It's one of the places where they allow gambling. I mean, you're going into the generals, the military. It is that stadium. And they'll tell you, they'll tell you have to shave your face. If you have long hair, they make you cut it in a buzz cut. I mean, everything is very strict. But when you walk in there, for me, I just thought about all the great foreigners who had come before me. Actually, my sensei from Holland, Ryan Simpson, Ramon Deckers, Danny Bill, the list goes on. And I was thinking of, if I had been from a country like Ireland, the UK, Australia, it wouldn't have been as big, because their history of Muay Thai is a lot greater than what America had. The Muay Thai in those countries people always think I'm hating, but I'm just telling the truth. In those countries, it's a lot further along. The history is a lot further along than it is in America in terms of us going to Thailand, if that makes sense. So for me, it was just like thinking about, wow, man, I'm here, and I kind of felt sort of like, man, I'm carrying America on my back. You know what I mean? I can't fuck this up. The same thing with the sit, which I'm like, if I fuck this up, man, I'm going to fuck it up for maybe a lot of other people. I'm the first foreigner, and I'm an American. I'm like, they could have chosen an Irish, a British, an Australian, or someone from another one of these, a Frenchman from a lot of countries who's more experienced, or, has a greater history, let's say. Mm-hmm. And, but when you walk in there, you just feel this aura of, it's hard to describe. It's like an aura of greatness. It's I guess it would be the equivalent of being a powerlifter and walking in the Westside. You just feel this like, holy shit, don't fuck up now.
Yeah.
Like you're just amongst greatness. Just, you can feel it in the air. And so you walk in there, you see the pictures of the champions, you see the gamblers, you see the concrete slabs where everyone's sitting on, and then it's like, you can feel the heat. You can just feel I don't know if there's any other way to describe it when you walk in there. And then in the back, you have the little metal pole where they wrap your hand. You stick your hand on the metal pole. There's no real locker room, so people can back there, smoke cigarettes, looking at you. You're next to the guy you might be fighting against. I remember I had just had my underwear on, and I'm just like, I just put my tie cup on around, and I'm just shadow boxing with my hands wrapped in my underwear just to say, I want to be like, man, I'm going, if my guys look, because again, I didn't know who my guy was. I'm like, yeah, I want this motherfucker to think I am batshit crazy. I'm rubbing my hands on the ground. Then I remember I went to take a piss, and there was a guy next to me, so I was like, I didn't know if he was my guy. So I remember I took my elbows and rubbed them in the urinals. I was like, these motherfuckers are gonna know I am mentally unstable because I'm trying to infect them when I get out there. Because I didn't know, so I'm nervous. So I'm trying to strike fear, so get any edge I can, because I'm nervous as shit. So I remember pissing. The guy's looking next to me, and there's like a spur of the moment thing. I was like, yeah, this fucker's never seen this before. So I rubbed my elbows in the urinal. And the crazy thing is, the guy just looked, didn't faze him. He just walked off. That's like, maybe that's not my guy.
I mean,
but it's a sense of, it's just
that's phenomenal.
A feeling of greatness. And the reason I stopped fighting there, the reason I stopped is it closed down. So I was one of the last to fight. Never got into the regret I have is the only two regrets I have is not fighting Lithway and not fighting in Roger Dermnum. And to be honest, I've never been in Roger Dermnum.
Really?
Never been in, never fought in there. My dream, like I said, was the Lumpinee.
Yeah.
And to try and make a name, and you know, I got, you know, close and then did some good things there, because it was just that there's nothing described. I felt like it was hard to stay motivated fighting after the Lumpinee had closed.
How much did that catapult you? Like
Lumpinee?
you fought over now. Your first fight in Lumpinee. Is it like a little bump, or was it a huge increase in your exposure?
The doors opened tremendously, because at that point it was like, man. But like I say, I had also the benefit of being an American, so I stood out.
Yeah.
Because at that point there hadn't been any. You know what I mean? It wouldn't have been. I don't think I would have gotten the accolades and done the things I did have I would have been from, you know, and I always reference, you know, Ireland, and, you know, it's your home country, and I don't think people realize how great of a Muay Thai history they have there, because a lot of them go to Australia. So It wasn't like Australia, Ireland, do you say the UK or do you say Britain? UK, same thing?
I can't really give probably the accurate answer, but I'd say it's all the same.
Oh, okay, well, yeah, this over there, France. So it was the fact of, I think, being an American, there weren't many of us. Like I said, it was myself, Cyrus, and it was Matthew Semper, and he was really doing. Matthew was mainly doing it big in the South.
But to that, there's a big difference in what you guys did, in that you lived it as a Thai, experienced it as a Thai, compared to those who would transplant in, transplant out.
Oh, right. We actually stayed there and put our boots on the ground and made it. I wouldn't have been able to get to where I got had I not been there. You have to put your time into. I would have never even got those opportunities had I not endured and said I'm not coming back. But I also, I tell the story of my mother and my other brother. I remember I only had enough to go over there for because I never used my degree and I pissed that away basically. I was just really smart, and you know, you can get scholarships and things. It's smart. I pissed it away. I worked a little bit for maybe half a year probably, and pissed it away. I was like, this ain't for me. I actually was working in a nursing home, and I remember watching someone talking to an old guy, and he passed away, and I was like, oh shit, I'm going to live my fucking life. And I'm like, this is, because you was in the hood, and you were seeing people that weren't visiting their people. I'm like, whoa. Like, maybe this is how we all turning out. Fuck this, I'm going to live my life. And that changed me a lot. But back to, I think we're saying this. I had to live it, because if you don't, but like I said, I don't think. I think being an American helped me a lot with getting that big bump after the Lumpinee thing. Because you know there had already been French champions there. There had already been Irish guys to fight in there. There had already been Irish UK guys, Australians. So
a lot of Russian too. There was
a couple of Russians fight, but not as much. It was just the fact being an American that I really, really stood out. And also, I don't even think they realized. They kept thinking when I first went over in the 90s, they kept thinking I was Danny Bill from France, because they didn't even know black people lived in America. So they were like, oh, him same Danny Bill from France. It's like, no, I'm from America. They're like, okay, Danny Bill, same France. I said, man, why y'all keep saying that, man? They were like, they don't think there's black people in America. I was like, this what kind of shit are they on, man? And then I was like, whatever, man. I'll be from wherever the fuck y'all want me to be from. Just keep training me.
What's amazing is their marketing, right? They're looking for some angle all the time.
They're always looking for an angle.
And it's that blew me away of how they promote fights.
Yeah.
How every fight was fight of the year, fight of the night, biggest fight of all time.
Always.
But that shows how many people go through.
But Lumpinee wasn't like that.
But because it was the Mecca.
It was the Mecca. You were there to fight.
Yeah.
And I had to and they don't care about one thing I like, they don't care about the hoopla. Like, one fight I remember, I didn't make weight. The boss of the camp, he liked us to come in a little overweight, like maybe, kilo. So, see, what 1 kilo is 2.2 pounds, something like that. So he liked for us to come in maybe 1.5 kilos over. No, not one. So about 3 pounds or something like that. and you get on the scale, you'd be over it, so you'd have your power. He didn't want you to suffer in training. So you get on the scale, you'd be overweight, and you put your son, nobody cared. They're like, okay, you're overweight. So if the other guy's on weight, he can go refuel. You're off weight. So what you do is they just put your stuff on, you go run around the parking lot. And there was sometimes you run around, both of you guys miss weight. You literally run around and you might be talking to the guy you're going to fight that night. It was a really daunting, it was like, wow, this is a different atmosphere compared to what the U.S. is. People getting docked their pay because I learned they don't give a shit about anything but the fight. What are you talking shit for? You look stupid. What are you concerned about the weigh-in for? Nobody gives a shit. Nobody's paying to watch the weigh-in. So you miss weight, just go out there, run your ass around, get back on the scale, make the damn weight. All we care about is you showing up and performing in the fight. Yeah. And that for me, that was that's what kind of killed me from like not understanding how the US and the MMA and all. It was so much hoopla based around everything else. And then when the fight's over, the best thing in the world, nobody wants to fucking talk to you. You win, they raise your hand, get the fuck out the ring so the next fight can come on, and go back to your camp and let's start the process again. I was like, this is the greatest thing in the world, fighting Lumpinee. They were like, all right, let's get in the car. You fought good. We're going to stop at McDonald's for your treat, and we're going to go back on the way back to the camp. And that was a treat. If I fought good, we go to McDonald's. And then we go back to the camp. You'd rest up. If you weren't banged up, you'd fight a couple of days later. I actually think I fought the next Lumpinee fight was maybe the next week. Wow. And that's the best thing in the world because it's like, it takes your sense of overimportance out of it, like the ego. And the other thing is, it's standard for them to take 50% of your purse, which for me wasn't a bad thing. I mean, but you also get let's say a level of protection because the big boss has some power. So I really got a certain level of protection. Can
you explain? I think people are hearing big boss. I potentially have got no idea what big boss means. Can you maybe just give a quick overview of how most Thai gyms work?
Oh, so you have the gym owner or big boss. A lot of times he'll be maybe he fought as youngster as a kid, or it'll be a family gym. He'll take over. Sometimes he's maybe a general or military or something involved, but he has a lot of power because the military, the underworld, all kind of go hand in hand when it comes to Muay Thai. And so the big boss, then you have his wife, which is mama of the camp. Now, mama really has the power, but everybody thinks it's the big boss. But the mamas always loved me, so I was always good because they always loved me for some reason. And so when I say the big boss like has protection, maybe he has police friends or other things like that. For instance, for me, when I break my hand or because I would break my hand a lot because the first time it broke, I never got it fixed. So it would just, it would always like break from time to time. And so they'll take care of you. Yeah. If you get in trouble on the outside, like they'll make things go away. For me, as a foreigner, I know you're only allowed to stay in there 30 days in the country before you have to go.
With the visa run.
So sometimes my passport would go to countries that I wouldn't go to. So I'd turn my passport over and my passport would make a trip somewhere and return with a stamp on it so I didn't have to miss training on the visa runs. Yeah. That wasn't always the case. But those are the type of things and the benefits that being sponsored or the big boss will take care of. Because you'll have that kind of power. You'll hand him your passport. He'll, especially if you're training for a fight, you give him the passport. A couple of days later, your passport comes back, and apparently it's traveled to Vietnam or it's traveled to Cambodia, and now you have the stamp, and you haven't gone anywhere. So like I tell people, my passport's been to countries that necessarily I haven't been to, or it's traveled on its own. I've traveled, and my passport has literally traveled by itself without me attached to it.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing, because those visa runs are not what I don't think people understand. You might be going down a bus, a boat trip,
those.
A very
methed out, let's just call what it is, methed out drivers driving that van.
Then you pull off into an area that you have no idea why.
Did you fear for your life every time you got on one of those vans?
Okay, I fear for my life every time I went on my little Hello Kitty scooter. There was, as I was telling the story.
Could you explain the Hello Kitty scooter is normal? Like over here, people, you tell people about a Hello Kitty scooter, they think something's wrong with you.
When you go in, the first thing that they offer you is a scooter, and you're like, of course, I want this big. Like Thailand too is the only place I ever saw signs for drive safe, drive fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you go get a scooter, and you just think it's just a regular scooter, and like, hey, can you drive? And like, sure. Like, there's no test. But like, you could have anything. I had a student ID that was my driver's license.
They don't
care. Like, yep, sure. Here's your keys.
They don't
go.
give a shit.
And then I look, and the first thing everyone gets is a Hello Kitty decked out scooter with floor mats. Hello Kitty. Hello Kitty. So.
Yep.
And I'm like, is this just me? But every foreigner who comes in basically ends up on one of these Hello Kitty scooters, and I'm laughing at the like they had no power. If you had a 5-degree incline, it's like
they're not going.
And you'd end up just pushing it the whole way up.
Yep.
Yeah, it was like everything about Thailand. You have to quickly figure out what
there's no guidebook.
No, like it's the people are so nice. They're
friendliest in the world.
They're exploited to a point, but when you start to understand, like when you can go fish, like at Big Mama's, you go fish, you bring back the fish. If you split a 50-50, they'll cook it for free for you. You give them the 50%.
Yes.
And then that's when you start realizing, like, okay, they're very family oriented. Like they're
very much so.
And they're so used to people taking. When you start giving, it's very strange.
Very abnormal to them. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, like, I felt like the night market was just blew me away. Like everything. Like you have to haggle. You see absolutely everything you don't want to see and stuff you do want to see.
Oh, that's true. Yes.
I only went downtown Phuket once. I couldn't do it. After that, I couldn't handle it.
Didn't like going down there?
No, it was just too. I remember out of all of us, maybe about 50 or 60 started that beginner's ring, and at the end there's maybe like 4. And I was asked the coaches where they're like, Phuket got him. I'm like, what? The nightlife. Because when we drove down to Phuket,
it will get you if you're not mentally
I parked
prepared.
on where the red line was.
Oh shit!
And then I come back, the scooter's gone.
Yeah,
you got to go pay your fine.
Yeah.
I said too, if you stick out like a sore thumb, which I did because I'm whiter than white, cop will go. You pay your fine, you're good, and you keep your ticket. You're good for the day. And then the following week they catch you again, and I'm like, I'm gunning it. And then they just like left fire. They just don't care. Like
no. They're
just like up. Because life is a very different thing over there.
Yeah, they don't care. Life and death, like, but you know they can get your way out of prison.
Oh, yeah.
When I worked at Max, we had a deal with Singpatanoon prison, and the prisoners would come fight. So the COs would corner them, and they would fight. And one of them was the global belt. So I worked 4 days. I worked the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the Saturday show. And the Saturday was like, so the big shows were Friday, Saturday. And then the Sunday with the mask, that was like the Thai versus the foreigner. But Saturday is how they decided what Thai would fight. So it was a 4-man tournament. Only Thais could be in it, and they would get the champions belt is what it was called. And that was my favorite night personally because the gambling was huge. It was Thai. And the best thing about it was there was no alternate. So if you had 30 stitches in your face in round 1 and you won, you better grease that up because you fighting in the second round. That was the best thing. It's like there was no alternate. No. You were fighting. If you didn't fight, then the loser was fighting. So if both of y'all were fucked up, whoever was less fucked up was moving on. But we had, so the weekday, we had, Wednesday, we ended up creating the global belt down at Wood. And I remember C-Neil, what's his name, was one of the champions from Singpatanoon prison. And
could you fight your way out of prison?
Yeah. And so that's what he would do. He was a prisoner, but they would come and the CO would corner them. And they would fight. He won the belt, and they would go back to prison. Well, he was the champion. I think if you did well, you would you could get out of prison. If he did well and behaved in prison. But it was ironic. There was a guy who was famous for, I think he was on the show, I think it was a prayer movie. I never saw Prayer Before Dawn or something like that. Prison movie, but one of the Thais, he was in prison for, I think he had killed 13 something people, but he was a big prospect and whatever. They thought he threw a fight, and so he ended up like going to prison for the murders. Like he had to make money for his family, so he became like a hitman or whatever. Yeah. So he won prison fights and got free. He used to come because he actually had a gym. So I guess after he became a monk, you know, and everything. He actually had a gym. He would come to Max and corner people, and I think at one point he had a guy, this was ironic, and I would learn this from because I got to be around so many great historians, the guys I work with, Kevin Omled, I hope I pronounced his last name right. He was Thai Norwegian, but mostly Thai. The most knowledgeable person when it comes to Muay Thai. I mean, he could tell you what somebody was wearing from the 1965 Lumpinee Championship fight. He can tell you the color of their shorts. I mean, he just knew everything. And then Rob Cox, all the promoters, the Thai promoters I got to be around. Got Matt Lucas. They were just, I got to be around John Walcott. So many great people that knew so much about Muay Thai. But yeah, so Sua, the guy I was telling you about was cornering the guy that fought Senio, the other prisoner. Damn. It was amazing. Yeah. And you can fight you can fight your way out. So that was one deal that we had because our boss was really, really a good guy. Mr. Watt was really, really a politician, really powerful, but like really, he really cared about the guys. Like he actually told me I before the double knockdown, I fractured my and I'm just kind of like reminiscing now, going through nostalgia here. I had broke my arm some fights before and it never healed properly because, you know, you get what you paid for. So because they bet a lot of money on me and it was an underground fight that nobody was supposed to fight anyway because the king had passed and I was in Bangkok and I remember I was at Muay Air training for a fight. The king passed away. Everything got shut down. I'm running out of money. And then I remember I had just enough on my phone I had one of them top-up phones, the Thai SIM card, and I remember I had just enough, and I remember calling a buddy of mine, and he was like, to the bot, he was like, okay, this is what you're gonna do. There's a fight, it's an underground fight. If you can get down here to the south, man, you can get you on this fight. I was like, what the fuck? He's like, yeah, man, look, man, you need some money, so you're gonna have to do. I was like, this is all I have left. You know, the people in there, you know, there's no fights. What am I gonna do? I was training for a fight, the King's Pass. He was like, okay, this is what you do. How much you have? He told me, he was like, okay, this is what you're gonna do. You can't go catch the bus from where you are. So what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to walk about a mile. Then once you walk, then you're gonna get on that station. From that station, then you're gonna go from that train to the side of my bus station. Once you get to this, you're gonna get off of there, but you can't get off. You gotta get off at 2 stops before because you're not gonna have enough to go all the way. You're gonna get off and you're gonna walk about another mile to the side of my bus station. When you get to the bus station, you're gonna have just enough. You're gonna buy your ticket down there. It's gonna be about an 18-hour drive on the bus. Okay, you're gonna have enough for that. This is what you're gonna have. You're having enough for a bag of chips, a snack or something, and a drink. And then when you get off, you're gonna have just enough when you get for the cab to get here. And it was right down to the bot. And I remember walking, and there's a video on my page that I put up, a famous me walking barefoot through this flood and this puddle of rain in the alleys of flood, because it just my luck as I was leaving, it just started to downpour in the alleys of Muay Air in Bangkok. You know, Bangkok streets, they flood. So it just started flooding. And I was like, man, I'm not spending this much time on the bus with some soggy ass shoes on. So I'm like, fuck this, man. I got feet like a hobbit anyway. I'm like, I'm just roughing it. So I walked down the alley, just my feet just in my bare feet. And it's clean. I wasn't worried about stepping on needles or other things. I was more worried about like maybe some kind of fucking cobra comes swims up there and tags me or something. But I was like, fuck it, what am I gonna do? So I walked down there and I never forget, to the bot. That's how I made it down there. I had enough for some chips. And I would space them out. For the ride, I would just eat a chip, fight the temptation, wait for like maybe 30 minutes, an hour, eat another chip. And I would like take a cup full of water. I would sip the water because I didn't have enough for the whole ride to get anything else. And then that's how I fought. I broke my arm. And then in that fight, and because the gamblers and all this, and it was very underworldish, they didn't pay me. They're like, here, man, they're only giving you half the money because they didn't think you were going to lose. I was like, man, look at this motherfucker, man. Like, this is fighting. Like, there's no guarantees in fighting. The motherfucker kicks hard. He broke the shit. What do you want me to do? And then, so they gave me enough, and I was like, look, man, this shit is definitely broke. And this is how they checked. I remember sitting on the ice cooler in the back because he broke it early in the first round. I tried to go as long as I could. Then he kicked, thank God, not in the same thing, so it became like a hairline fracture and went all the way through. So it didn't compound and stick out the bone. And then he kicked it again, like towards the elbow, and I was like, oh shit, my arm. So it went numb. And I just thought it went numb, so I started running in a circle, and he'd get close to me, so I just started trying to elbow him and knee him. And then the ref was like, gotta pick your arms up. Like he separates you and he's like, my arm's dangling. He's like, you gotta pick it up. I'm like, I was trying to like shoulder swing it up there to get it. He's like, this is over. And so you sit in an ice cooler on like a cooler you got for picnics. I'm sitting there. A guy comes out with a cigarette, and I shit you not, he's sitting there looking at my arm, holding it, and the ashes are dropping on my arm. He's like, broke, sure, broke, sure. Then he puts it out. This is the weirdest thing about that night. This is why I believe in curses and voodoo and all that. 6 other fighters on that card got their arm broke.
Same night.
6 fighters. To this day, I'll never forget the 6 fighters. Because I kept hearing the thing like this. So this guy like, oh, broke. I said, then I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So I'm getting more and more nervous because before every fight, whether it's your first or your 300th, you're always nervous. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on, man? Like, are they sniping people out there in the crowd? And 6 fighters got their arm broke. And then remember, we go to the hospital. Now I have, I think, $3,000 for the gave me. You get what you pay for. I got a little bullshit cast and like, don't get it wet. So I have to go back. So now I'm going to another gym in the South. I'm like, I can't go. I don't have enough to go back to Bangkok. So I'm like, oh, fuck. And I'm embarrassed. I had this Australian sponsor. That's a whole nother story in Australia. And I'm embarrassed. I don't even have enough to call him. And I'm like, I'm not calling this guy for shit, man. I'm like, I just lost my fight. Fuck this, man. I'm too embarrassed. So I'm like, all right. I was like, all right, I know it's camp. I'm just going to go there and stay at this camp. Another good camp. And I was like, I'm going to go there because it was a trainer from a legendary sit-o thing. I was like, yeah, if I show up, he'll always take me in. And so I remember showing up. And they were like, go stand around him. I was like, just drop me off at the bus station. Because this all night, one of these ramble houses, so all night. So now the sun's come up. So I haven't slept from the fights over and everything. The sun come up. I got the bullshit cast and like, don't get it wet. I'm waiting for the bus. What happens? It starts raining. So I remember covering this shit up. And so the cast never healed on my arm properly. So the arm never healed. So to fast forward this story, that's when I ended up... in Max, I ended up, that was a few fights earlier, I ended up refracturing it. Like I had another hairline fracture in training. And that's when I go back talking about how the big boss was such a good guy. He was like, because you have to show face. So if you pull off a fight, it's not like here where you can just say, I ain't fighting. If they put you on the poster or if they put you out there to fight and you punk out and you ain't fighting, it's called losing face. The boss lose face. And it's a huge thing that you know about that. It's a huge thing to lose face. So like these guys, a lot of guys would get killed the way they pull out of fights in the US. Like you'd be just found floating in the river. So they made me go into the office and to the boss and everything. And they were like, and they, because they took me to get extra, I'm like, I think something's wrong with it. And I could just see the look on my boss's face at the time. And they were great people, like, you know, and this was a camp, it was invite only. It didn't even have an address. We were all sponsored. That we had to fight on Max. Like, it was invite only gym, like, plain and simple. You were like, we had a buddy from Wales, who's one of the top fighters at the time. I mean, a British guy and a bunch of Thais and Laotians there. So, and I could see, look on his face, and I was like, after I left, they were like, well, what's gonna happen? I was like, look, man, I'm taking this fucking fight. You know, like, I remember going back and the chairman was like, okay, what do you want to do? I was like, nah, man, nah. He not losing face. I'm taking this motherfucking fight. Because the boss had basically told me, don't worry. If you snap it, if it breaks, I'll pay for you to get it fixed. He's like, don't worry. But what they didn't realize is like, I could just see the look on my boss's face. I'm like, nah, he not losing face, man. I'm taking this fucking fight, man. Yeah. Fuck that, man. Like, they've done a lot, you know, for me. And it was a history because they knew the people from Sipmo Chai, the family. So it was a lot around like this. Nah, man, I'm fighting. So that's how good the guy from the big boss at Max was. Now, there's some other stories. He was a good guy, but he had a lot of power. He was a politician, and he had a lot of power. And I got a lot of benefit from being there.
So the fight, the double knockout.
Oh yeah.
How did you get back up? Like, were you coherent when you just literally just wanted to get to your feet? Was that your goal? Was like get to your feet, or did you just have no idea?
I tell people the story. I don't know if I'm telling you what to say. You guys getting off first just because, I love y'all here, man. Believe it or not, I actually heard my brother Kevin's voice like, get up, man. It seemed like forever. I didn't know what was happening. I don't remember the fight because he hit me with something. And it was the first time I represented Thailand. Like the red corner is Thailand. So
Yeah.
I got to, I felt like it was like the reward for all my like years being there, all the sacrifices. Like I got to, still come out on the Jumbotron with the American flag.
Yeah.
So I felt like it was like a honor twofold. I got to finally have the American flag, you know what I mean? And like this is cool, but also be in Thailand's corner. Show like, look, an American's really done it.
Merging two nations.
Yeah, I paved the way and I finally done it. I finally get my flag on the big screen, the Jumbotron on this. At the time, Max was the most viewed fight at the time, I mean, it's not as big as Lumpinee, but I guess the magnitude of the fight became bigger. And to be in Thailand's corner and then have all these, there were legendary people in there, all these people in there watching the fight. But I don't know, he hit me with something. I wasn't even supposed to fight him. I was supposed to fight another Thai named Saming Dam. That's why they brought me in there. Because I was essentially retired. And it was Chanrit Sit-O, who you might remember him. He was at Tiger Line from the legendary Sit-O camp. Little dark-skinned Tyler, built like a bowling ball. He used to wear the do-rag all the time. You probably will remember him. He probably came to the India stint, but he was from the legendary Sit-O camp and was just legendary. So he never trained me up into that. He was just always like just cool with me and following me. And then he came with the idea like, when they asked me to be the trainer of this camp for the Max camp, they were like, they would look for somebody, I guess like Saming down there, like, Dorian, he's, ting tong, like not right in the head. He'll fight anybody. He doesn't care. And sure enough, he's in the car. I don't remember anything about I remember touching gloves. I remember I threw a right hand, and then that's all I remember. Because I don't know what he hit me with, knees or something, and then everything every time I watch it, I don't remember doing it, any of that stuff. And then, like I said, I got down, I knocked down, and then that's the only time I remember. I just hear my brother's voice saying, "Hey, get up, man." And then I got up, and I remember because I knocked down and my corner, so you can see me look over. I looked at him. I didn't know what was happening. I looked at my corner. And I just remember seeing everybody like red. And I was like, oh, I'm red. And they were all like jumping around, raising their hands. And I'm like, oh shit, let me raise my hands. It would have been hilarious had I would have lost. Because that's what I didn't know. I just seen everyone raising their hands, like jumping around. And I was like, wait. I remember I could recognize faces. Somebody, Luke Barr in the corner. I was like, oh shit, raise your hands. Everybody's raising it. Raise your hands too. That's when I raised my hands. And then finally I came through. I was like, oh shit, I actually won.
Could you believe how viral that went?
No, because when I kept driving back, I remember going in the back and it was like this. I remember saying like to my buddy Luke, I was like, they started taking my handwraps off and I'm like this. Oh fuck, I lost. And they're like, no, you won. Then I remember going we took the scooter back to camp and I kept tapping him on the shoulder like, hey man, where you going, man? The stadium's that way. We got to fight. He's like, the fight's over, bro. I was like, oh, fuck, I lost. Because you don't remember anything. So the first thing that comes to your mind is, fuck, I must have got knocked out. And he's like, oh no, bro. This is it. You're going to be surprised. And then I go back to the camp and this is the funniest story. The next day, this Thai had brought in some people from, what the fuck is that country? Estonia. It was like an Estonian national team. And these guys they're lined up. Like they're literally lined up. And and I had got some weed. Now weed wasn't legal at the time. And so I had gone in the bushes and I've been to smoke some weed. So I snuck back in the room. Now I get paranoid when I'm high. So one of the little boys was like, hey, you gotta come out. Mama, Papa wants you. I was like, oh shit, I'm high right now. Like, this is gonna be bad. Like, what's going on? Like, I looked out the room, and they're literally lined up like they're here to meet you. I was like, what the fuck is this shit? So I walked down the line shaking these Estonian fighters' hands. It was the weirdest shit I've ever seen. But then after that, we was also partly staying in the camp, and I was staying in a trap house. But I never knew how viral it would go. Cause I remember I went to after the camp, I was like, after the year started, all right, I'm like, all right, I'm going to the trap house, and I'm like, just so I could get away from everything and just hide out there.
I didn't know it was you until I watched the double, because a double knockout very rarely happens.
Yeah,
and then I'm like, no, can't be Dorian. And then I'm like, holy fuck, that's Dorian. I thought he was, because I thought you were retired. I'm like,
I thought I was retired too. Before that, they did convince me out of that.
And I was like, it's just, we'll try to get a clip in this podcast. It's just one of the most amazing things to see, is to see you get up and you put up your hands with the funniest shit ever. Like, you're just like,
I didn't know what was happening. I'm like, I did it. Looked over there. Do you want to know the funny thing? Do you remember the knockout with the Ramon Deckers and the other guy, the black guy, Ryan Simpson?
Yeah,
it's another. That's my sensei, and he was the first person to call me. We just started laughing and talking about it in Holland. Like,
well,
so that's to me the most famous double knock. So after that, when he just started, and he just laughed and was like, and I had been training there for a little bit before the fight. So here's the story. I had a sponsor in Australia that would literally fly me to Holland to train in Holland for big fights, and he would fly me back.
That's amazing.
And he was like, I would just train over there in Holland. He was like, hey, look, whenever you're ready to come back, just let me know, and then I'll fly you back. So there was times I fought in Europe, but I was like, I just like the grind. This Thailand was just, Europe is fun to fight in. It's
well
glamorous, let's say, and good skilled fighters. But
Dutch kickboxing and Dutch Muay Thai is
not in fighting. I'll fight in Slovakia, a place like outside it, because I didn't want to. Because I told you, I don't really. I kind of maybe regret. So I should say 3 regrets not fighting in Lumpinee, Raja, or excuse me, not fighting in Lithway. Lithway, of course, fighting Lumpinee, Lithway, Raja, and fighting in Holland. Not taking a kickboxing fight, but
what was it like trying to deal with their clinch?
They didn't clinch over that in Holland. Ryan, the beauty about Ryan was a legend in Thailand and in Holland. So he understood how to mend Dutch kickboxing and Muay Thai, because he was over there in the golden era with the Ramones and things like, and that's what put him on the map, was that fight he had against Ramon Deckers and beating Ramon. I actually did an interview with him where he told her, because we laughed about our double knockdown thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, when he took me into the camp, the hardest thing was the tempo. Just the tempo, the boxing, and Ryan's style is very angle-oriented, IQ, and when you talk about like a real, like he's like my mentor, brother, sensei. Like when you talk about like a real sensei and teacher, I never seen this before. He'd watch me shadow box and correct my shadow boxing. I never thought it seemed like that. He literally will watch you shadow box and say, okay, you kick. The guy's not there anymore. He's over there. If you kick this way, he's not going to be there. He's going to be there. So why are you kicking? Why are you facing there? The guy's there. So you kick, you stand there. Okay, if you're doing this, why are you this close? He's probably grabbing you now. You're, the guy's, where is he up against the ropes? You're this close to the corner. Why don't you step? He literally watched you shadow box. I mean, when you talk about like, and he's a guy who was not only, they say sometimes great fighters don't make, he's not only one of the greatest fighters, he's made great fighters and made champions. Yeah. And that is extremely impressive. But yeah, he elevated my game a lot. Like, I mean, like to the point now, it's like going to like being part of a family over there now, the same way it was for Thailand for me. It's also cultural over there in Holland too, the kickboxing. He wasn't very much clinch oriented, but he was very like footwork. He could switch stances, very intelligent, and they very hard boxing, hard low kicks as well, which helped my style a lot. But I would bring the clinch with me to them, like because I like to believe the best foreigner clincher I've ever met is a guy we both know, Johnny Betts. Johnny's turned out to be the best foreign clincher to ever the best foreigner clincher ever, in my opinion. I mean, you knew him at a very young age when he was very young.
Like to say I knew who he was.
Who he was? Okay.
Yeah.
he was he has developed now into the best foreign clincher. I mean, he's so impressive. But I like to think that my clinch is good as well.
Yeah.
So I was able to bring that over to Holland and help. But yeah, I really been like lucky. Like, so I mean, it was more around what I always say. He didn't want to change my style. He just wanted to put a little bit of his style into what I already did. And he always knew I would be going back and forth to Thailand, like as opposed to staying and fighting consistently in Europe.
To kind of bring this in to how we met at Westside with Matt. And this is to get all this backstory is important because I learned so much from you because strength conditioning really wasn't a thing.
Right.
It was to where it's like you would run, you do that, but in terms of actually lifting weights, but you could see through your experiences and everything we talk about, I'm like, well, weight training wasn't a big thing. Acquiring skill was a huge aspect.
Yes.
Like, how much can I refine? Like, you would go, okay, you got to sharpen your scalpel.
Yeah.
How much have you got to do that? And then that's when we started to pivot training. It's like, oh, our strength training should be all about giving you the opportunity to acquire more skill.
Right.
So how can I make you healthy and strong enough to keep training?
Absolutely.
And that's what we were figuring all this out in real time.
You guys turned me into a tank at one point. Do you guys remember that? Nobody believed I got to 200.
Yeah.
And I actually had a deadlift.
You did. And I mean, we had a hell of a group.
Oh, the team was incredible. I mean, if we could have stuck together, I mean.
It was, because it wasn't just everyone had a purpose of figuring this out. Like, Matt was the nucleus for all of us.
Of course, yeah.
And we're figuring stuff out for him, but as a byproduct, we're figuring out stuff with each other. We're figuring out how to talk, how all these different disciplines, how you had a wrestling coach who wrestling was life. You had jiu-jitsu coach who jiu-jitsu was life.
Yes.
And then you were so, like, placid and like, hey, well, like, here's Muay Thai. And you were like, oh, I'm just let you all figure it out. I'm just going to go over here.
Yeah.
And then we started figuring out how everyone would talk. And then I would get with Matt. I'm like, Matt, can we get in the schedule? And then
don't forget Louis,
Matt is like, yeah, I've got a schedule. I'm like, I know you have a schedule.
Yeah.
But bringing it back to the gym, I would pick your brain, and then you would train in amongst everyone. And I could see you starting to click with, like, your love of the deadlift started. You're like, which was very bizarre of all that. But the accessory work, the stuff we would do with bands, how we bring in bands, we're like, no. This is how you should do this exercise. So whereas a bodybuilder would be just like doing a lat pull down, for an example, would be doing it, executing a particular muscle sequence of activation, picking your guys' brain, like, okay, we have to, if you're doing a clinch, well, you're not going to do a rep, you're going to hold. Yes. And then you'll see, like, Rogue came out with this ball, which is very like a head, and like, okay, this is how you would hold. So we're able to put our sport, like, not too much SPP, but we're able to put the sport and like, okay, here's how you actually do the rep.
Yeah.
And when we do rows, we'd hold for a second, for like 2 or 3 seconds, because in real life, you're not going to be fighting like this.
A lot of that was the fact that you had the experience of Muay Thai as well. Like, a lot of coaches don't have that.
Mine's a very, very, like a very low level.
A lot of don't even have that.
And we had Lou. We had you. We were able to pick from everyone.
Yeah.
And then, like, Lou would just, I remember we were all talking. Lou walks past Matt, stops, doubles back, pokes right in his obliques, and he's like, woof.
Yeah.
And we're like, what? And I remember Matt's like, what the fuck? And we're like, basically, that was his way of like, you better work in those fucking obliques.
Yeah, you're soft.
And so we're like, okay, we'll have to come up with some sort of exercise for that.
Yeah.
But all those experiences of all the disciplines, because we used to live together.
Yeah.
So all these tangential conversations we'd have watching tape, just talk. I mean, driving down to Cleveland.
Yes.
Like those, remember the chili?
Yes.
Remember the hot chili powder we got from Victor, and you took a little bit? Remember that?
Oh, that was fucked.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like just these like funny little. Yeah. Anyway. But all that, I don't know, it was distilling in my brain of like, okay, how can we pull all this? Like, we've got so much experience.
Yeah.
I don't think, hopefully, as time goes on, people are going to realize how huge an impact what you guys done for American Muay Thai is, and how that's distilled into sports, but it's distilled into strength and conditioning too, through us. Like, okay, this is the angle of which we got to do this exercise at.
Yeah.
And back to the way you said Ryan Simpson was watching you shadow box. It was like, well, you're shadow box with a purpose, right?
Yeah.
You shouldn't make it easy for yourself. Well, why would we do the same with our accessory work?
Right.
I don't want you to be the best deadlifter in the world. I want you to be the best at your particular art or your discipline.
Right.
And our accessory work was refined based on our conversations, Matt conversations, the guys in the group, watching everyone interact, like how important shit talking was, back to that family atmosphere. You might have people who didn't really see eye to eye outside, but internally, everyone had a purpose.
It was like a family atmosphere, yeah.
Yeah, like
we
it was
bicker,
yeah,
like brothers. It was like a family
ups and downs, and then you're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
And we'd turn up at 7 o'clock to watch Matt train or to do stuff, and it's 8:30, like, where the fuck's Matt?
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, okay, we may have got the days wrong. And then been able to just see you, and even when you're down to strong style, see you guys interact, to see you do clinch work down there, and you're like, dude, it's just crazy how much this is distilled into the system of training we have for fighters now. Like the 3-day-a-week training wasn't a thing until we all got together.
Right.
Because back to Matt's schedule, I want to Matt in because it's a 4-day template. And Matt was like, I don't have 4 days.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, how many can I give you? I can definitely give you 2, maybe 3. I'm like, okay, let's work with 3.
Yeah.
We can definitely do 3. And we brought in the double dynamic effort day.
Yeah.
And then every time Matt would go, like, okay, we'd always have the training partners.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said, and even this podcast, you said to me is like, okay, I have to get him to a level to force me to raise another level.
Yeah.
And then Louis would do the same thing. It's like, well, make them stronger than Matt. So when he comes back, he has no choice but to. So we would work with, like, so when Matt go off to a camp, we'd have the guys, and they became super strong.
Yeah.
Like, to where I remember Matt comes in, I was like, what are you fucking deadlifting?
Yeah.
And then, but it forced like that little group to go up. And I think we all met the Chris Cope fight, and then we had different fight camps in between. And then we happened to click because, like, you were in Thailand, and I'm like, hey, you ever go to the Tiger? And you're like, what the fuck do you know about Tiger?
So I was like, the first camp that had me come over there. Yeah.
And then it's just all the people, like with the coaches he'd bring in, because he'd bring in like Kazek. I met Beecher through that, like Adam Sabato, Carlos Caballero. Like we're able to distill
back from Thailand.
and then, but you were like my translator because you had all the little things. Like, well, Dorian, how are we going to put this into the gym? And then you would want to get into the gym. Because every time you get a taste of the weights, you're like, oh, man, I'm going to work in this deadlift.
I liked it. And the wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
That was the best thing for my clinch. I think we discovered how much the wheelbarrow
carried over.
Yeah.
And then there were some things we realized, oh, we have to make this nothing like the sport. We have to make it completely general.
Yeah.
And it will carry over. Because no one in the right mind will think, well, how is that wheelbarrow going to your clinch? Well, then you realize the grip work. Yeah. And all that was working.
Do you think like sometimes like we actually became your experiment a lot of times to get us prepared for Matt, like by getting us stronger? Like, okay, I'm going to experiment on these guys, so when they go to Matt, like they're going to be that much stronger, that much. Because I realized how much like stronger I was getting in the clinch.
I had
actually
no
like go
choice
strength for strength.
Because Louis was like, show me what you've done. Because you're allocating time, and like I was allocating a lot of time.
Right.
And nowhere else would the boss leave you. Just go.
Right.
But I would make it up in the back end.
Right.
But there had to be purpose. Like, where is this going? Mm-hmm. And then Matt was obviously having that 7-fight streak up until the Lawler fight. But even at that,
he got robbed.
But up to that, like understanding how people work together, understanding where strength and conditioning was in the totem pole.
Yeah.
Like it was important, but it wasn't as important as fighting.
Right.
Right. Anything that helped you fight better was great. But watching what we were doing and watching if Matt could spend an hour in the gym or an hour doing clinch work, well, like I could clearly see how clinch work can help you win a fight.
Yeah.
So how can we adapt training to be able to do an hour and a half? Like, can we affect that? And then we started with, then John came on the scenes. We started understanding joint manipulation. Like, how do joints work? Having healthy joints will help you be more athletic.
Yeah.
And all this was just happening in real time. So it's very hard to be in and go, oh, we're creating this thing. It just happened.
Yeah.
And then all you guys started getting really strong. And it wasn't because we're trying to get really strong. Everyone was just, the competition was there. And
I
you
used to
go,
get knockouts going back to time after match camps from being here.
yeah, I mean,
I was just drawn. They were like, "What the hell have you done?"
yeah, and it was just pretty simple. It was just general training. And then that's when we realized, oh, it doesn't need to be this complicated thing. You don't have to do, well, this exercise is going to make, an exercise is just a tool.
Yeah.
It's like, we understood we have this toolkit. Let's pull out this tool. It delivers force into your body somehow. Does it carry over? And the best thing with everyone, and especially Matt, was the feedback given was brutally honest.
Yeah.
Like there was no, and that's
Matt
what you need.
sugarcoated.
If something didn't work, or he thought like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You better be on point. And then having Louis the other side, you're like, why are you doing that? That's too complicated.
Yeah.
Like just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I didn't realize how much the system had evolved until we had coaches come back who were there at the start. Like, what the fuck is this? And I'm like, oh, this is how our fighters train. Like, oh, this is, and you forget, because with Lou, you couldn't write about it until you're here for 10 years. Like that was his thing. It's like, hey, you need to be immersed in this.
Right.
And it's all about Westside. Like everything we did was like, how do we better the club in this athletic angle? Because football has been touched on, but like really the fighters, and he loved fighting.
Yeah, Louis loved it.
Like, dude, the time he ran out of the office and wanted you to smash him in the face.
That was the funniest shit. Then he came in there and smashed the phone. Look, I got Louis riled up. There was times Louis and I couldn't beat because we would get each other hyped up.
Yeah.
I would get Louis too hyped.
he was like, dude, I can't look Dorian in the eyes. I just know where that's going to go. But it's amazing that just by having conversations, just like general conversations would lead to deeper things.
Yeah.
And the amount of stuff you did with bands, even when you're traveling and just sending quick messages like, hey, what do you think about this? And
I love the band stuff.
Yeah, but like, I mean, it was all that what really wasn't done before. Like it's more mainstream now because people have their own interpretation. And
Right.
it was great to see people taking the conjugate method of training and stuff they got from here or from listening to Louis or reading the books.
Right.
But to see what we were able to do when Lou was there, and for him to, well, especially let me to make as many mistakes as possible, knowing that if I make too much of a mistake, I'm going to get my ass kicked on this side, and he's going to win, see me get my ass kicked. So either way, like Louis wins, he always puts himself in that position.
Yeah.
I just think it's an important part because that 3-day system, when it came around, the importance of volume in a short space of time for speed work came around.
Yeah.
The importance of deadlift, of a sumo deadlift, and it's like that carrying over to jumps, to the accessories, how changing the thought process of how you do an accessory, just like your shadow boxing, like, hey, do it with intent. Put your sport into what you're doing. Don't do a lat pull down like you're a bodybuilder. Do a lat pull down as if you're a fighter. Yeah. As if you're a grappler. When you took the personal training cert, do you remember going through that? Or to where like, hey, you think I'm passing? I'm like, just do it like you did in Muay Thai.
Oh, yeah.
And then you just answered it within your own sport and every answer was correct. Yeah. That's when I'm like, oh, this education is universal once you put it into your own sport. Yeah. And,
it made a lot of sense.
I mean, there's so much stuff that we got, and I don't think we could have got it if you didn't have the experiences you had, if you weren't like living in the house and then working with Matt. Yeah. Because we had to figure out ways to like, oh, how are we going to get this into Matt's camp? How are we going to get through Matt Brown science?
Matt, that's the thing. Matt is just sometimes, he's just so smart.
It's ridiculous.
You literally have to trick him to get stuff because sometimes he's too smart for his own good. Yeah. It's like, so the thing we were talking about earlier, he literally made us better coaches because of his intelligence. Like, 100%. Because if you try and give him, throw something in there, you know, he's going to break it down like, hey, look, you guys better make sure, how's this going to work? And he's going to pick it apart. And so you better have an answer for everything or why this is going to be effective. And it could never be, I think, like you have to know. You have to know. You have to know. You have to know. And yeah, like 100% meeting Matt, getting to meet you guys, then with Lou, you had to be objective. You couldn't just believe, okay, hey, here's what I think. Like, no, you have to know. Yeah. Two, Matt said a lot of things to me. Like, I was not trying to cheerlead him on, but I was definitely on the verge of, like, I'm the coach. You should do what I'm doing. He was like, you realize like I'm a pro athlete. Like, yeah. If I'm going to half-ass this, I'm half-assing myself. Yeah. So I'm pushing myself. So I'm like, oh, dude, I never fucking realized. And then I'll go back and talk to Lou. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like,
they're not a version of you. You got to treat them with their own personality. So
Yeah.
whatever the personality is, you better figure that out.
Exactly.
And that's how you train with them. A coach called Rick Scarpola has a saying is that you don't make the playbook fit the player. You make the player fit the playbook. You make the playbook fit the player. And that's what training is. And with Matt, you're like, oh, okay, here's what we're going to do. And then you'd have your structure. You try to put it into Matt's structure. Then I would go talk to you. I talk to every other coach.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh shit, they're not talking. Then I understand the feedback loops that I'm like, oh, because Matt, there was no head coach. There's no person to transfer information to everyone. Then I'm like, hey, Dorian, just so you know, there's this going on. And you're like, what? And then I go back and it might have been like you, Adam, and Carlos is awesome. Because I go to Adam. Adam's like, what? And I just like pass on this information.
That's the funny thing. Matt never had a coach.
No, well,
he tried to make me at one point. I'm like, hell no. The Thai guy, man.
He had a co-op. Everyone added like
by committee. It was he's like coached by committee.
Yeah, it was. And at the end of the day, Matt would do what Matt wanted to do, and it was normally it worked out at the camps.
Worked out for him
yeah. Because he had a very unique style and of every aspect of it. But yeah, like I
think it was because the fact that he was a trailblazer in the MMA game, and the fact that he searched out the best knowledge. When people talk about, Westside, it gets no better than that when it comes to the strength and conditioning. Not only me, but, he then got exposed from me being around Kevin Ross, Sean Yarbrough, all the guys that I came around, who I came up with, he got to be exposed to him. So the highest level of Muay Thai knowledge you can get. And first time, most of his time, I was living in Thailand. I was based in Thailand. The only way I could come back was when Matt would fly me back. The amount of wrestling out in the Sabado, that's gets no better than that when it comes to wrestling knowledge. Carlos, jiu-jitsu, he literally surrounded himself with the highest degree of knowledge. It wasn't like he found an okay BJJ guy, an average Thai guy, an average strength and conditioning coach who hadn't been proven. He found the best of the best. And I think that's what made him, overall course, difficult to train, is because he soaked up all the knowledge from us over a long period of time. And I think as he got more into his career, he became a little bit more difficult because he became so smart, because he had all the knowledge. And he was also the type of person that likes to read and expand his, on the knowledge itself. So he would immerse himself in the strength and conditioning from guys that you would talk about. And or guys I would talk about, or the BJJ guys. So I think like he was really a trendsetter, and I think that's what made all of us all have to elevate our games. It's because of how smart he became, because of product of all the knowledge that he was surrounded by.
I learned like more from him, 100% than he learned from me, because he would pull from that. And he would go to other gyms and train with other coaches, and he would bring back more information. And I'm like, oh, this is good, because the way Westside is, we want to know what you're doing. If it's better than what we're doing, definitely want to know, because we want to put it back in the ecosystem. And Matt's 42 and he's still fighting. Yeah. Like, you're down here, you're getting ready for another, I'm not sure when this goes out, but the fact that the biggest test of anything is time. Yep. So at 42, to still be in the UFC, to still fight at the level he fights at. Yeah. And to still be as mentally alert and sound as Matt is in the sport he's at, just goes to show like how much of a, even though on one side he's a barbarian in terms of like he's just a savage. Absolutely. But he's that warrior in the garden. You're like, this guy is like brought us all together. It was really we've had like Louis worked with Randleman, Coleman wouldn't come in. But you had all these people come in and out. But we really took from that and created this whole environment where now we're starting to write about it, which is crazy. It's like 2023. Wow. Now we're starting to really see how effective this is. Yeah. We have these guys come in and we've got grapplers, we've got fighters. And the speed at which they're getting better at is immense. Yeah. Which all came back down to why we needed to get the backstory of you, because us living together for that period of time, whether we knew it was going to happen or not, it was just those stories, everything kind of went in, and those books you started looking at, the Trigger Point book, you're like, hey, wonder would this work? And then you go with Pape's like, what the fuck is that?
Bro, I sit when I come to the office and after the workout, and I'll sit there and look at the books in the office.
Yeah. And it's just a huge part into what the MMA and grappling style of strength and conditioning we have. And the biggest pivot was we need to be strong as necessary to acquire more skill.
Yeah.
Because you had so many fights, Matt had so many fights, all these. I'm like, okay, well, how do we keep you healthy?
Yeah.
To go kick ass, right?
Absolutely.
Like strength helps, but if you have a level of strength and even more skill, skill is going to just because when we went down to Pilgers one time, I'm like, hey, I wanted to feel your clinch because I'm like, the way you see it, and then every time I would try to engage and just go all out, you would just loosen up, and I'm like, what the fuck? Then you're like, hey, if you're going to be like a rock, I'm going to be like water. And then you said it.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's so smart. And I was so tired, and you were like nothing, not even breaking a sweat.
Did rock and water now.
Yeah. But you started understanding, like, okay, this is where skill comes into play.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to be dumb enough to try to learn something, I need to be in shape enough to go over and over and over again. Right, because I've seen you work with athletes. I can't think of the guy's name, but you definitely swept him 50 times in a row. He came up for one of Matt's camps. It was over at it was a Buckeye MMA. You were
was it the heavyweight?
No, it was small guy.
Stipe's?
No, he was Kazeka was up. This guy came into town for one of Matt's fights. And
Pequeño. Was it Pequeño?
No, he was an American fighter. He was fighting in Bellator. And he worked with you because I brought Louis over to see it. And all we heard was like,
oh.
And this guy, you like get up. And as soon as you get up, like come again and like down, come again. And Louis
I remember, I forget his name. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And Lou's like, what the fuck happened? And then Kazeka comes over, Dorian's in a good mood.
That was the younger me then.
But yeah, I just wanted to get this story out because this really leads into what we're doing now. So what's next for you? Like what you're up here for Matt's camp. What?
Yeah, for Matt's camp. Right now, not sure. I've been working down with Master Lloyd Irvin, and I'm actually acquiring. He has so much knowledge in judo and jiu-jitsu and his way of teaching, and it shows in all the champions he's produced, like that are homegrown. He's actually, I'm hoping to spend some time there with him more because he's actually evolving my clinch even more by showing me really putting me into the judo, and showing me how it can be applied while actually doing the judo things that I never got to. I was just so involved with the foot sweeps and but now he's showing me the different type of inner reaps or the different throws from different positions without the gi. So that, and then obviously Thailand's always calling me. I get so many offers there every day. It's like I feel like I spend most of the time on the phone in Thailand and I do in the U.S. I'm in the U.S., but half the time I'm talking to Thailand, so my sleep schedule's always off. But Thailand's like a drug. I feel like because I gave so much of my blood, sweat, and tears to the place, like it's like it has a hold on me. It's like I don't know if I could ever. I think I'm gonna have to die in Thailand at some point. I think that's all. I think this is what's gonna end up. I mean, I'm gonna have to die in Thailand and scatter my ashes over there in the ring somewhere over there. But as much as I want to stay, I always say, well, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be here, and then next thing I just pop up in Thailand.
Whatever happens, I do hope and wish that your lineage, style, and everything gets passed on. I know it's in through Matt, but you have a lot to give out, and hopefully, if this podcast episode can get a little bit further out into what you can bring to someone's game. I think there's too much knowledge there not to be delivered in, and to thank you.
I want to do one-off with fighters. Like the gym thing be kind of difficult, like unless in that one-off, because I got a unique personality. And if you have a weak mind, it's not gonna mesh. I got to deal with with fighters. Because I have a unique savage mentality. So like if you don't share the same mentality, I think that's why Lou and I got along so good. Why I get along with you, with Matt. We all share the same mentality.
Yeah, the same hunger for success, right?
Yeah.
We want not just us, we want to see others succeed.
Yeah.
Like that's the big thing, and the lack of, you couldn't survive if you had an ego. There's just no. There's just no way. As much as I wish you could, in some senses, the other way is like you just can't. When you're around
if you
people
had a soft mentality.
Or we just talked about, like, you have to develop thick skin real quick.
Yeah, you wouldn't have made it.
like real quick. Like a text message could be taken out of context real quick. Then
real quick. If you just had like didn't have thick skin, you were not going to make it, or a soft mentality. Oh my goodness.
Anyway, Dorian, I appreciate the time.
I appreciate you, brother, as always, man.
I hope this is one of the few more, and I wish you the very best in everything else you do.
Thank you, brother.